Good morning, Mr. Roy.
Good morning. Good morning. We've had a volatile overnight session and open so far.
Yeah. I did take a trade this morning. I'm $73 up in futures desk. I am in a long here now, up $30 or so, $40. Trying to hit 31.75. Hits that. I don't know. We got orders at 30, so it might not get all the way up there. Probably need to just put my take profit down here, and it's going to take 45 out of it.
So you're building a snowman on Bookmap.
There's 115.20 on the futures desk so far.
Lovely.
I can only make about 30 more bucks than I am maxed out because I'm trying to pass this thing, and they have consistency rules to pass. So I can make $147 a day. It's actually $150 a day because I went over a couple times. So all good, all good. But that's done. So I see you're not sitting in your SpongeBob chair this morning.
Nah, I'm in a different spot, different computer, so I don't have that. I haven't downloaded the background, so we're gonna just go normal side.
I hear you.
My Trade-Evate is saying my password's wrong, which doesn't make any sense. Yeah, incorrect password, incorrect. Try again. That's weird. Let's see if I can log in on the other one. Yeah, no problem logging in on my cellular device. Not sure what's going on there.
Well, we're just sitting here waiting. I did drop a quick one there on futures desk, so we'll see if we can get another entry somewhere. We're not going to chase.
Showing tide if you can. The put premiums are dropping, call premiums are rising, volumes ticking up on SPY. Similar story on general market as well. So both SPY and general market are signaling a move up. We do have Jerome Powell testifying at the top of the hour for Congress. He's already released a statement. So the first part of this is already known, first 10 minutes or so. He'll read his statement, and then we'll get peppered with questions for about 3 hours.
He's going to get beat up there.
Yeah, we may have. I've got the video tab open, so if there is stuff if we want to show it, we may show it for keep it running while we walk away for the day. So the stream may still be active while you're even out. Still debating on that, but I know a lot of you guys want to know what he has to say and what the testimony is. So why not give it to the people?
Waiting on a green here or reversal is what we're waiting on. Remember, we try to. We usually take some heat when we try to predict what the bubble's going to be. So we're just going to wait and see. And get a green bubble here.
10 minutes before that starts.
Oh, he starts at 9 Central? I thought it was 10 Central. I don't know why I thought that.
Yeah, it's at 9 Central. Tacit just announced a bunch of trade deals will be coming near July 4th. So I don't know how much of that is impacting this little drop down or what, but that news just hit the table. I've got Financial Juice voice news playing in the background, so whenever it comes out. Yeah.
We're getting a move up on the candle, but not a green bubble yet.
I think you're getting a little bit of take profit
What was that? It's like a car just drove through the room you're in. Are you there, Roy?
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, we got you. Just I asked a question. I didn't hear anything. I thought you might have got out. There's a green bubble. I don't know if it's going to stay green, but we're going to sink. Hopefully, we get a move back up. Where he is. Way up there. It's got a long ways to go to get there, don't it? And this thing could throw another bubble right back out at us. So this green might be a little premature here with that move we had down, but I don't know. We'll wait and see if it can get some momentum up. That's why we have stop losses and all that good stuff. So
I was looking at Periscope. Oh, come on, buddy.
that big green bubble is not as big and green anymore. And it turned red right behind it. So that's not a good sign. We could go down to that 15 level. We don't hold
10 minute.
Yeah.
We are right at VWAP. So you could see a little support here shortly. We've got Periscope. You're getting all sorts of shifting. You've got Gamma went from green to red right above us, and then red to green right below us. So that kind of tells me we may go down, find some support, and then push up. However, we are about to head into a fundamental event with Powell speaking. We already know the statement that he's going to open with, so that's not a surprise.
No, that is not a surprise. Yeah. That would not be a surprise.
For those of you who didn't read the statement or haven't gotten to the statement yet, it's basically saying, ho-hum, Jerome Powell, there's not much change happening. He's going to hold steady. He's going to hold rates. He sees the labor market as solid. He's not in a hurry.
He's hawkish.
Yeah,
very hawkish.
He's not in a hurry. So I would expect in this hearing you're going to get a lot of Powell saying, I don't comment on that. I don't talk about that. I only focus on monetary policy. And I don't think he's going to give you much more. He's just going to take these kind of the way these testimonies happen. I'm sure all of you have watched it, but we'll kind of go over it. Is these politicians, they phrase a statement and they say yes or no. It's never yes or no. It's never, but they want you to say yes or no. So you're going to get very annoyed.
I got a feeling he's going to say that with tariffs uncertainty still a lot, because I think he's got a point to prove with that. That's his. That's the only thing he can go on why he hasn't cut rates yet, right? Tariffs. And I love when they look back and like, all right, so you say this, you say that, but then or not. You're waiting for something that hasn't happened yet. Like, what are we doing here? That's the thing that kind of kills me with him. Is well, we're waiting for inflation to go back up. And I understand that you've had the parts where they're saying that like the sentiment stuff is there is more inflation coming. That's been playing out for a while, and we haven't got more inflation yet. So,
well, I think it's hard to make any policy changes when there's no trade deals announced.
that's
how do you predict the future if you don't know any sort of deal?
Well, technically he's not supposed to predict the future. He's supposed to react to what's happening at the moment. What kills me with him, this is the only issue I have with him, is he will sit up there and say we are data dependent, but then it's a feeling he's got that inflation is going to go back up. That's not as much data, because the sentiment of stuff it's gauged off surveys and stuff. Who surveyed? right?
Right.
That's what I want. That's like a poll. It's like any other poll. It's surveyed, right? Who's the one answering the questions? What is their monetary goal on the questions that are asked? I'm not saying it's right, wrong, or indifferent. I'm just saying
I get you.
It's like a poll. We got to take it with a grain of salt, in my opinion. But, yeah, that long was a horrible idea there. That one green bubble did not follow up with any green at all. So poo-poo on that. And I think you're right. I think this is a lot of, I think we first had profit takers at first, but then we just got really nothing since. It's just been
there's no
volume falling off till this candle.
See, I thought I was kind of with you on the long, to be honest, because I thought since the statement's already been released, the profit taking would be minimal at best, and then the dip buyers would show up to say, we already know what he's going to say because he's already put it out there. But Periscope is suggesting you're at a little bit of a support here, so you could see a little tick up.
We got to pop up to 22 real quick and come back. That was strange. It popped up to 22 really quick.
Yeah.
Had that made a green bubble just to come right back with a red bubble on top of it. So, ooh.
No, that red bubble's getting big. So this could be.
Yeah, this could be a move down for sure.
We just got back in the cone. Granted, that's completely pointless this early in on Periscope, but you guys can see it here. We are touching this green gamma here, and you can see there's literally nothing until 60.60, which is about 5 points away on SPX. We are going to probably come down and test this orb low, which is about 6114.50-ish. See if we can find support there, but you are breaking below VWAP here. You are getting a little bit of a bearish candle. However, could be right at support. As you can see, we've had kind of this overnight move. You are hanging out at this area. So I wouldn't be against a long here, to be honest. And I think money
is in a short. But I think I think 15 might be our spot down here. See, I don't know if you got it. What do you have on this? Oh, you have that on the screen. You don't have to.
Yeah. So book map
showing 15.
You got your 15. Yeah. So you're.
If it breaks that 15, we could definitely go down to about 6,000. Which, if you follow my write-ups, you would see that is a spot that we tend to like. Well, here we go. We're going to break 6,000. Rolling it, broke it, and pop back up. Now we should have we could have a really good move down. But it popped right back up on that break. That red bubble gets big.
Yeah. How if they didn't get transitory inflation wrong, being way late on raising rates, everyone would have more confidence in their decision making. I would 100% agree. They missed the boat on raising rates. They were too slow on doing it. My stance with Powell, though, since he's raised rates, has been pretty solid and forward-looking on everything. And you could argue he has navigated a soft landing. But I guess his view is, put it in football terms, right? His view is, are we in the fourth quarter with 2 minutes left? Or are we in the fourth quarter, or did we just start the fourth quarter, right? Is he supposed to be taking knees right now, or does he just keep running the ball and kind of push?
I forgot we had consumer confidence come out too. 5.4. Wow. Whoa. That's got to be a misprint, right?
Let me see.
Consumer confidence, actual 5.4, forecast 99.8, previous of 98. We came in at 5.4.
No, that's wrong. 93.
Okay.
Yeah, he said ignore the headline number. The financial juice guy just said it. Ignore the headline number. It's 93, not 5.4.
Wow. Irate Trump calls for Congress to work him over. Oh, right. There you go. That's what we want to hear.
Yeah, I mean, there's going to be these.
This is a little interesting. I'm going to tell you right now, I don't like the pops until, because I don't think the market is going to like, and this is just my personal thought. I don't think the market is going to like them if they beat him up, work him over. I don't think they're going to like that.
Yeah. Well, the other kind of part to this equation that nobody is really suggesting is even if Powell comes in and cuts rates, it's going to be up to the bond market to agree, because that 10-year yield is what causes the rates. So if the bond market doesn't agree that it's time for him to cut rates, then your rate really doesn't change on your borrowing side of things. The only thing you can do is print more money at a lower rate, but then that would devalue your currency. So he's caught in a tough spot, to be honest. He's got 2 masters, really. 3 masters if you count the American people. But
his goal should be the American people. That should be no matter what. That's what all these people should be doing, but that's not what they always do.
If his goal is American people, if his goal is American people, then what class gets hit, right? If you're the asset class, you love inflation. Like Pulte and these guys that have a bunch of real estate, they don't care about inflation as much because their stuff gets inflated. Their valuations get inflated due to the inflation. The lower class really gets impacted by inflation. So,
lower class is definitely more affected. Case in point, they lowered a point in the 24 and the January 5.
Exactly. Exactly. So if the bond market does not agree, then it doesn't matter really what he does.
Well, look, it's conference board. 12-month inflation expectation 6 points down from 6.4 May and 7% in April. I love playing devil's advocate to Roy, because that conference board, their 12-month inflation rate has dropped this will be the 3rd time in a row it's dropped, I think.
Yeah, I mean, you are not, look, to me, I agree he should hold rates. Your market is at near all-time highs. You're not seeing pain in the industry. Everyone keeps telling us how strong the market is, how the economy is so strong, yet they want us to cut rates. It doesn't add up.
It adds up because we're talking about American people. American people cannot afford to buy a house.
Right, but the housing market got so inflated because we had the rates lower. The reason why people can't afford houses is because the impact of lowered rates.
All I know is if I want to go buy a house right now, I'm going to pay 7% interest. That is stupid.
Yes, but people need to also drop the price of the home that they inflated in 2020.
Have you looked? Are you keeping up with it? The house of homes have dropped a lot over the last
and they need
months.
To keep coming down because they're completely overvalued in where they were. And so that's the gridlock is sellers don't want to lower it anymore because they got used to the price of the valuation. They want demand to reclaim into the market so they don't have to lower their prices.
Well, prices are still elevated. There's no doubt about that. But interest rates are making it where you can't buy the elevated houses. Middle income people cannot get to do anything. They cannot afford to buy a house right now. Their wages are not close enough to be able to afford anything. Dirty Harry says, I get price reduction emails every day. Correct. I follow realtor.com. I get emails every day on all the price drops. Like yesterday alone, there was 100 price drops in my city alone. Yeah,
and they need to keep coming because, again, you've got houses that have gone up almost 100% in value in 3 years.
I agree on that. But then you also add
dropping it
on top of that makes it where nobody can buy a house.
Right. So who blinks? Who blinks first? Should it be the sellers or should it be the Fed?
Fed should already blink some. I mean, if inflation has been coming down, inflation is down. We're hovering right around 2%, which is their goal. They keep hollering, and this is when did they first announce tariffs? in what was it, April?
April 2nd was the announcement. The implementation has been kind of staggered throughout the last few months.
And we keep saying that inflation is going to go up because of this, which typically, if you look at it, inflation does not go up with tariffs. Inflation usually comes down. And I know that's a double-edged sword. And I do think that the economy is skewed right now because I do think a lot of people went out and bought stuff they didn't need because they were scared of inflation. They were scared of what people were saying.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're going to get, I don't know if we're going to get a recession, but I think we will get a stagflation for sure.
Oh, hiring started.
Yeah. We can argue about this every day. We have different feelings on this. I'm not going to call you far left today, though. So you won that argument yesterday.
I love a good monetary debate. To me, you look at the housing market, you can make an argument to cut rates. You look at other places, you can say they need to hold rates higher. There's always going to be a picking and choosing wherever you want to get the data to support your stance.
Book map is doing kind of what you're seeing on the charts here, just kind of chilling. Nothing crazy. We did get it. We're getting a green, a red, green, red. We need to follow a couple reds up and we get this dive down to 6,000, and I will be pretty much done for the day, and I can rest and relax and go into some stuff. I don't know.
I'm gonna flip over to the hearing if you want, or do you want to keep it on the charts?
I would rather keep it on this right now. I mean, I don't. Last time I watched this hearing, I got so frustrated. You remember this? I can't stand the stupid questions they ask. Like, it's not. And Roy said it earlier. It's like you ask a question that he cannot answer, and then you get loud and ask that question again, and then you ask it a different way. And guess what? He's still not answering.
Yeah,
because he can't answer. He can't. He's not going to come on there and say, "Yes, Trump is an idiot, messed everything." He can't say that. So why you're trying to get him to say that, I don't understand it. Like,
right.
You're there as a committee. The committee's purpose is to get information. Well, the committee's using this purpose as, hey, I'm going to build myself up so I can get media clips, right? Make me look good. That's all they use it for. And it drives you crazy. That goes back to you're supposed to be doing stuff for the people. Well, we're not doing stuff for the people. We're doing stuff for ourselves all the time.
Mm-hmm.
It frustrates. Politics, I love it. And hey, I don't know what he just said.
Yeah, so he's actually not on the deal. We've got Senator Lucas talking.
Well, Senator Lucas said something that took us right down that 6108.50 in bounce.
Oh, Trump talked.
What did Trump say?
Trump said he needs to get the big, beautiful bill ASAP on his desk. Now that we've solved Middle East problems, we need to focus on domestic problems at home.
So have we really solved Middle East problems? That's my thing. I mean, I get it that Iran did their stuff. They did their ceremonial bombing, but is it really a bombing if you call ahead and say, hey, we're sending 6 bombs?
As what does somebody say? We wanted we expected WW3 and we got WWE.
Yeah. I say get the big beautiful building ASAP. Get the budget deal done this week. Okay, Trump.
Well,
I figured that would take it down more because that's not, people don't like the big beautiful bill.
Yeah, that's going to be the next kind of point of contention is do people want it passed? I mean, to me, yeah, I agree with Howie here. But to Trump's credit here, what he does is he is a master at narratives, right? So he will get he will get the message out that the war is over. That wasn't a war, but now he named it a war, the 12-day war. And so he can say the 12-day war is over, but now a new war has started, or if there's another conflict. So he's got an ability to be able to switch sides pretty quick. But back to the big beautiful bill, I don't know if there's a lot of support there, like you said, and I don't know if they're going to be able to rush this one through because there's just not a lot of unified support there. And I think they've done a disservice by kind of going against what they campaigned on, and that's saying, we want smaller bills with more direct impact to the American people so they know what's going on. And you look in this bill and you've got a lot of pork in it, and that's not exactly what people were wanting.
Oh, this bill is moronic. Yeah. Let's call it for what it is. It's way too much stuff in there, right? There's way too much stuff in this bill. Yeah. There should not be near the stuff in this bill that's in this bill. That's the first disservice. They are not doing, yes, you are getting some tax breaks in there. It is going to benefit the middle class some. And that's what they're throwing us out there. That's why they're trying to make people feel bad for what, you vote against this, you're voting against the middle class. That's why they put these things in there, right? So if you hadn't noticed, they'll put stuff in there like it could be whatever bill, and they'll throw something in there for like teachers or healthcare. And then you might not support the overall bill, but you vote against it. Now, well, you're against healthcare for people. You're against this.
It's awful.
Yeah, they just put just enough in there to make it where you can't do anything with the damn bill, right? You can't support it, but if you don't support it, you're anti-American. If you do support it, you're anti-American. It puts people in lose-lose situations, in my opinion. That's just the way I look at it.
Yeah, and if some of these policies are good enough to stand on their own, then they should peel them off and make them their own bills, right? Like,
I agree with. I saw somewhere and it'll never pass. But I saw where there was one congressman that's trying to push for you vote on one bill at a time. You do not add anything to each bill as its own separate thing all the time, which I think that's the way it should be. Politicians have screwed this thing up so much where they've got to be able to be sneaky, and they've got to be able to do the stuff we're talking about. And that is not how it was meant to be. That's not why it was formed the way it was formed. And it just drives me crazy with all the pork. And that's not a left or a right thing. That's just a damn common sense thing. Like, let's have some common sense on stuff, right? I mean, there used to be a podcast I watched, and it was called Hand Raise Guys. And it was called Hand Raise Guys because they always like, hey, is there not somebody in there who can raise your hand like, hey, this is stupid, right? Like, you got to have a hand raise guy somewhere all the time to say, hey, let's look at common sense stuff for a second, because this is not common sense. Just my thoughts there. I don't know what we've done. We got 62 viewers today. Let's see.
I think the Powell testimony. Jerome Powell brings the people out, the bots out.
Yeah, for sure.
Definitely brings our emotions out.
Yeah, I mean, it's just
Powell's talking now.
Yeah, and look, I have nothing against Jerome Powell. I think Jerome Powell was put in a lot of situations before where it was a no-win situation, and he's probably in one right now. Just, I don't like how he talks out of both sides of his mouth sometimes. And I understand you got to walk a fine line being a politician. And look, no matter how you look at this, he is a damn politician, right? He is the Fed chair is a politician. There's no doubt. He was appointed that spot. There's a reason he got appointed that spot. It's not just because he's smart, which I think Powell is smart. I'm not going to sit there and call him a moron and whatever like Trump does, because I think that's stupid. I don't like name calling anyway, but I just think I don't know. It all bothers me right now.
Yeah, I mean,
we'll get off the stream and I'm going to not think about it at all, and it won't affect me one bit, because you know what? I'm not buying a house. If I do buy a house, I'm going to pay cash for that house. So I'm not worried about the interest rates. I do want stuff to come down. But so far, we're not getting the come down that I want. So now Powell must be saying something nice because the market is popping up here.
Yeah, he's just doing a statement. So he just finished a statement.
I need somebody to come out and say debt is too high, tariff. We're going bankrupt. I want to hear somebody say bankruptcy. I mean, if anybody can tell, I'm in a short, so that did not play out. It just missed my take profit down there. I had my take profit at 6108. It hit 6108.50. So that makes you feel even better. Bookmap is now suggesting that we're just going to grind up a little bit here. But this thing could turn on us. Roy loves going back to see me in a bad trade.
Sorry.
Every time Roy's moved me back.
I can't.
You can leave.
I can't go to my window because I have the thing up. So the volume will come blasting through.
Will it come through if you do that?
Let's try it. Let's see.
Nope.
That coming through?
Nope.
No?
No volume. Yeah, because typically what it does on mine, it picks it up through my microphone, my speakers through my microphone.
Ah.
Yep.
All right, let me try something real quick then. We're gonna go live, present, stop screen, present, window. Okay. So we can only do, if I do the tab only, it'll do the audio, which actually may not be a bad one.
Okay.
Let me do that. Share screen, window, Chrome tab.
Well, this thing's fixing to soar up. Son of a gun. Oh, now we wait. We got in that short, but then it turned long. I should have cut it as soon as it did that drop, that fake drop, and bounced back up. That's what I should have done, but I did not. Now you got everything going up.
All right. Give me a second. This may go.
World with lower tariff rate.
Right,
First,
so
I wouldn't comment on any other FOMC.
remove. Gonna go there. Go here.
I think
Go there.
many patterns
right.
are
Now we have it, right?
Certainly the one you mentioned is a possible one. We could see inflation come in not as strong as we expect. And in the case, that would tend to suggest cutting sooner. We could see the labor market weakening, and that would also suggest cutting sooner. On the other hand, if we see inflation coming in higher, or if the labor market were
so you're saying cutting sooner,
and we would probably be moving later. So I think a range of possible paths are possible. Certainly the one you mentioned is one of them.
So which one did you go to? You got to go share tab instead of share window.
Yeah, and you got to have it in the tab of your.
Told us in this committee that you would stay in your lane and not comment on President Biden's proposal for the American Rescue Plan.
Mute your microphone real quick.
Increasing federal spending.
Perfect.
And, you said it
what I
was an
wanna
issue,
see.
but that you would stay in your lane and not
Never
comment
checked
on
up.
it. But here in this year, you have commented on this idea of tariffs being set by the executive branch. So are tariffs in your lane, but a huge fiscal spending by the Biden administration not in your lane? Explain to the committee why you chose to be silent in February of 21, but outspoken this spring.
Sure. So we haven't commented, and it would be inappropriate for us to comment on the policy of tariffs. We don't have a view. It's not our job, and we just wouldn't do that. And just as we wouldn't comment on the reconciliation package that you're working on right now. We're not commenting on tariffs. What our job is inflation, keeping inflation under control, and also keeping maximum employment. And when policies have...
This thing might work all the way back up. Right now, 6130. You got 6125. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you fine.
Not the policies themselves, but the inflation becomes our job.
Yeah. My views on price stability. I think it's a first among equals in your dual mandate. I've argued for that. I've introduced legislation to make the dual mandate the sole mandate, and we've talked about that before. But I was very curious about your thoughts on former president of the Cleveland Bank, Loretta Mester's quote that I read from last fall. She says, "I think that maximum employment is the maximum level of employment consistent with price stability." In other words, she elegantly ties that together, that price stability is what you can have more control over rather than, all these other factors that enter the employment picture like legislative and executive branch. What's your thought about her quote?
I personally think that's a very reasonable way to think about it.
Thank you very much. I yield back.
So no,
The gentleman from New York is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you,
let's see if
Mr.
we can
Chairman. Good
feed
morning,
up, yeah.
Mr. Chair, Chair
Who is
Powell,
this?
and thank you for being here. Last week, the FOMC decided to maintain the target range for the federal funds
Oh my
rate
God.
at 4.25%
New
to
York.
4.5%. While I was not surprised by the decision to hold rates steady, I was surprised by the committee's revised forecast since March, which represented a decrease of
Call premiums are
0.3
rising,
percentage
call
points
volumes
for
rising.
GDP, a similar increase for core PCE, and an uptick in the unemployment rate to 4.5%. Can you explain the incoming data that the committee has seen since March that caused it to make these adjustments?
Yeah, I'm in a short and a combine. It's
First
not
of all,
going
these
well.
are individual, this is not a committee forecast,
I'm
these
in
are
a
just individuals
couple
submitting their
hours.
own personal, forecasts, and we don't bless those as a committee. But I think people are looking at the incoming data.
I don't know if we get
and a
much
range of
here,
different
much more
judgments.
than
If you
what we've
look at
got
the
so far, to be
range,
honest
if you
with
look at
you. I mean, it could go up.
the
but
central
it's
tendency,
just
you'll see that
kinda-
it
I think
covers
they're
quite
gonna
a
wait
wide
for
range.
something
Those are the medians that you're talking
substantial to
about.
come through.
I think so. Inflation is projected to have moved up
Something
Yeah, I
that-
agree.
because of what we've seen, particularly from tariffs. And I think if you look at other outside forecasters, you'll see very much the same thing.
And
the
what
same is also
data are
true.
you looking for?
Well, we look at the incoming data on, we look at our own forecast and we ask ourselves what's likely to happen.
So he is
monetary
saying
policy has to
inflation
be
goes up because of tariffs.
forward-looking. A forecast is a prediction of what's going to happen in the future.
Yeah.
Thank
which-
you. In its statement, the committee
That's gonna
announced
be the
that it
point
will
of
continue
contention.
to monitor the
Right,
Take it
Howard,
easy,
implications of
Howard.
the incoming data and adjust the stand of monetary policy as appropriate.
Monetary policy.
Some analysts predict 2 rate cuts by the end of the year are still on the table. Is this
I
a
love that
fair and accurate assumption? And what incoming
Mhm.
data will the committee need to see to consider these cuts?
What will actually happen with rates is going to depend on the path of the economy, and that's highly uncertain. So I would just say what that means at this moment in time is that a significant majority of the committee, but also there's a pretty significant minority that doesn't agree, but a significant majority feels it will be appropriate to reduce rates later this year. And what that means is that each of those persons who wrote down a cut in rates later this year, they think that there's some state of the world where inflation doesn't prove to be as high, or the labor market weakens, or some combination of those two things, that it will turn out to
Or
be
they're
more
trying to
likely
get
than
a
not appropriate
Fed
to
chair position.
reduce policy rates, subject to
Yeah.
great uncertainty. I mean, we will, the story has been evolving, and our thinking has been adapting, and that will continue.
They need to fix his microphone. We're getting a little echo sometimes on his mic.
Thank
They
you.
need to fix that. They-
Chair
Yeah.
We
Powell,
spent enough money. Where's
although
Doge?
the
We
ceasefire has
cut that
been
money out.
tentatively reached in the Middle East, the situation still has the potential to open global and energy markets,
say cocaine?
especially if the ceasefire is broken. While at this point,
Maybe
Iran
not. Maybe I
seems
heard that.
as unlikely
I heard
to
cocaine.
close the Strait of Hormuz, that decision could change. How is the Fed assessing the current situation and incorporating those assessments as it considers future adjustment to economic projections and its stand on monetary policy?
So I think it's too early to know what any economic implications might be, and I would not want to speculate. Like everyone else, we are, of course, watching the situation.
Thank you. And Chair Powell, after reviewing the economic data following the meeting last week, it seems to me that the committee is indicating that we could be headed for a situation where inflation accelerates while unemployment rises and growth become more sluggish. In this scenario, this will put the Fed's dual mandate of maximum employment and price stability in tension with one another. In this scenario, how does the Fed balance these priorities in order to achieve both mandates?
So let me say that we're not facing that right now, and that isn't really our forecast that we will face such an issue in a serious way. But if that does happen, then what we do is we look at the two goals and we see which one of them is farther from its goal. Two variables, is maximum employment or price stability farther from its goal, and we prefer the one that's farther than its goal. And then we also ask ourselves, how quickly will they return to goal? It's a very difficult situation for any central bank, and I would say again, we're not in that situation right now.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
A little drop in
Judge
call
Jerome's time's
volume.
expired. The Vice Chairman of
Yeah.
the full committee, Ms. Miser,
very little.
is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair Hill and Chair Powell. Good to see you again. I got a lot to cover, so we're going to try and keep this concise. But following up a bit on what Chair Hill had been talking about, you had said in January 29, 2025, quote, "We don't know what will happen with tariffs, with immigration, with fiscal policy, and with regulatory policy." I would add energy into that, by the way. "We need to let those policies be articulated before we can even begin to make a plausible assessment of what their implications for the economy will be. This is no different than any set of policy changes at the beginning of the administration." However, December 18 of 2024 at the FOMC press conference, you noted, and I'm paraphrasing, that some Federal Reserve officials began to incorporate preliminary conditional estimates of how fiscal policies might impact the economy into their forecasts. This seems inconsistent, and I sidebarred with the chair to say, okay, did I hear this correctly? His question and sort of your answer. What I heard is that there was a belief that the IRA would not be inflationary, but that tariffs could be. Therefore, suddenly you and others were commenting on tariffs. And for the institution, I know you try to be consensus driven. Why are there FOMC participants making fiscal policy assumptions into their forecasting when you yourself said that fiscal policies need to be articulated before the FOMC can make a plausible assessment into their implications, what those will be? And I think if there's different participants having different assumptions, that would render the SEP, Summary of Economic Projections, biased, meaningless, useless, less impactful, and when you're not comparing apples to apples. So wouldn't it make more sense for all the forecasters to make the same fiscal policy assumptions at the same time? Or if not, shouldn't each participant disclose what assumptions that they're using and building into that? So here's the question.
So that's a great question. That really, when the Summary of Economic Projections was originally designed and put into effect in this way, the way it works is that individuals are free to make whatever assumptions they want, and they do disclose them. They disclose them in their speeches and things like that. So there will be situations where some people incorporate something and others don't, and we try to be transparent about that. But that's kind of the way it works. When I say we don't take it into account, I'm really talking about policy and the committee as a whole, where we won't take things into account until we know.
And you believe that the participants disclose their assumptions when they're doing their forecasts?
Well, I think they do that in their speeches. Each people go out. You may have noticed there are a lot of speeches. And
I guess the opaqueness of the Fed has been something over the arc of my 15 years on this committee, has been one that has been debated greatly, including auditing the Fed and a number of other things that have gone on. I've got here a brief moment. I do feel like I need to touch on interest rates. Not to be a shock, you asked how the family business was doing back in Michigan. Families involved in sand and gravel and aggregates and construction and things like that. It's been strong. We need more labor. We need a few other things on that, what's happening. But I mean, I think there's no recession. That's been established. There's no hyperinflation, or certainly not as what some had been projecting. Yet there seems to be higher than expected, or certainly desired interest rates for many of us. And I'm curious how high interest rates, they hurt Americans who are paying car loans, credit cards, mortgages. You had FHFA Director Pulte asking for lower interest rates, which would obviously impact home buyers as well. So what is it that's keeping, in your mind, the Fed from what many of us believe is the right thing to do, which is to lower some interest rates. And by the way, match what the Bank of Canada, Bank of England, the European Central Bank, the Swiss Central Bank, a number of emerging central banks. By the way, that's your own assessment on page 33 as where you're laying that out. Why aren't we doing what the rest of the world is doing? Is it because we're at full employment? Is it because of those tariffs concerns that you said weren't part of the analysis? Was it energy, groceries, durable goods? Why?
So you're right that if you just look in the rearview mirror and look at the existing data that we've seen, you can make a good argument that that would call for us to be at a neutral level, which would be, a couple of cuts or maybe more kind of thing. The reason we're not is the forecast by all professional forecasters that I know of on the outside and the Fed do expect a meaningful increase in inflation over the course of this year. When I said we weren't going to talk about tariffs and inflation, that was to say until we see what the policies are. And so now we know a lot more. It's 6 months since I said that. So anyway, I'd be happy to continue this with you.
Thank you.
Gentleman's time has expired. Gentleman from Michigan, Ms. Tlaib is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. Chair Powell, last month there was research published in the Journal of Urban Health that found that more than half of Black women of reproductive age, that's the term they use, in the counties that I represent, that had experienced some sort of eviction during their lifetime. So that's like 50% of Black women in the two largest county, Wayne County and Oakland County in Michigan. And these numbers are horrific. As you know, were you aware of that?
No, I was not.
And evictions are often very traumatic experience, but also.
Can you still hear it or no?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, well, did you get tired of listening to it finally?
Well, I get stupid questions. I'll kind of back off of it. I mean, social issues is all that. I mean, he's not going to be able to comment on. He's not going to comment on. So it's like pointless.
Right.
But I think you're going to get a little bit of a just grind pop. I don't know. I don't think he's going to say anything that's going to be a shock and awe to the market, which is kind of classic Powell.
Yeah.
As much as, everybody kind of wants him to be a little bit binary on topics. He's just not. He's just going to be, I don't comment. He's not going to attack Trump. He's not going to do any of that stuff. He's just going to stick to his kind of vanilla policy stance. He's definitely not going to be a showman. He can be when he wants to, needs to. But I don't think he's going to do that today.
Well, I'm a little shocked he is coming in a little dovish today compared to what his statement was.
Yeah, I mean, he threads it pretty good. All right, so what is the TNX doing?
No clue.
I'm going to make a new scene.
Yeah, I got a feeling. I don't know why I've got this feeling. This feeling could be wrong. I got a feeling we're just going to grind up slowly. I could see 61.35 coming into play today. Unless something comes out that, he says something very, very hawkish, which he has not seemed to be in the mood to be saying anything super hawkish, but you never know. They are not beating him up like I thought they would. So that's why the market is liking this. I was expecting a lot more combative questions, and I don't think we really got any of this so far this morning. Like you said, we're going to get some stupid questions, but not really combative questions. That makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, his statement was we could see inflation come in not as strong as expected. If that's the case, we'd suggest cutting rates sooner.
Yep.
So I think you're going to see probably the next two readings be a critical driver of when your cuts are coming.
I could honestly see one in
July.
July. I can see one this next one. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think most, I'm not saying most, a lot of people are kind of banking that in. I haven't looked at the latest percentages, but I'm assuming July is still pretty high. Have you looked lately?
Let me look. I think it actually just shifted.
Oh, really? Okay.
So it's still 81% pause.
Okay.
And 18% cut. So I wish I could share multiple screens. That is aggravating.
I'm with you. I have to use to share bookmap. I have to use my MacBook to share bookmap. I can't share it from here.
Let me see. I got another computer here. Let me see if I can.
We're getting a couple of red bubbles here. So if we get a green bubble,
They're arguing with Powell right now. It's gross.
that's why we're getting the little red bubbles. Calls have just shot up though. So if we can get a green bubble here next, are they gonna turn that red bubble green there? That would be pretty bullish.
I'm gonna put his hearing on this one.
They did not turn that bubble. They did turn it slightly green. It's a very small green bubble, but now we're getting a bigger. They're definitely fighting here for a little bit, but I don't know if they're fighting because nobody's really in this market because the volume is complete garbage.
Yeah.
If we do see an increase in volume, I would think we would see pop. That green bubble did not finish as green as what I want it to be, though. Ooh, oh, that was us. Okay, I looked our live and it showed that we were streaming the other thing still, but then it's a little delayed on Facebook. A little bit delayed on the Facebook.
So
Got a lot of orders here. A lot of orders right around here. Right to the upside. It's kind of holding it there at that 60. I'm at 26 level, 61, 26. Not letting it pop above that. If it does, we'll see 30 in my opinion. And like I said, if we can break 30, 35 to 40 would be my next target. He must have said something good. We had a little pop back up there. Call volume ticked down a slight bit. Premiums ticked down a slight bit.
I'm gonna switch it real quick. We may get some. Stay with me here. All right. Let's see. Present. Share screen. Audio. So we're gonna get the feed here shortly, and then I'll flip it back.
Banks get to decide who their customers are. That's not our.
There. Okay. Whew. All right. Now I gotta flip another scene. And got my big mug. So now we're gonna do this
on the housing.
Boom. So if we want to get back onto it, we can. All right. Now I got to do share screen back to normal. All right. I want to go back to mine. It's going to be black screen, share screen. We're doing a lot of stuff on live. There we go. There's your Fed runs rate. Whew, that was a lot to get there. 81% is your expected pause for July. 18% your cut in September. You got 66% chance of cut. So be interested to see how these things unfold after this hearing.
Yeah. We're going to break
Periscope.
this level this time.
You got some gamma that it can catch to do just that right above us. So looks like it's got about a 10-point move in SPX that it wants to do. Flipping over to Bookmap, you're getting the snowman bubbles.
Yeah, it's it gave a pretty good signal just a second ago. I am in the longs. So we're seeing if we can I'm trying to get up to 30. I got my first take profit at 61.29.50 on take profit trader. We got so close, didn't quite hit it. And then I'm gonna put my second one up around 35. If we break up, put it at 34. We break out. But we are struggling. We did get up there close to it. They threw some orders at 28. They kind of slowed it right in its track. So if it breaks at 28, then you still got to go through 30. Then you got to go through 32. 5, then we could see possibly a pop to 40 or so, which would be fantastic. I just need this 30 test first. Come on, go up there and test 30. Hey, you finally reposted my stuff. You've been slacking on that. You've been slacking on that.
Yes, real easy. I've been laggy a bit this morning.
Mine doesn't really seem to be like, I haven't been in many trades either.
Yesterday got you, right? Yesterday, that
was on my end. Once I reset everything, restarted, all that went away.
So try that real easy, see if it can.
All right. So I took profit in one account on Take Profit Trader. I'm still holding to 35. So if we can get to 35, we got to break this 30. 30 is going to be a bitch to break. And if I can say bitch, because I don't know if anybody saw Trump said fuck on TV, so on interview. President can say it, I can say it, right?
I think that's the rules.
Let me go back and find it. Everywhere. I look at Twitter. I'm like, oh gosh, here it is. Pulte is going after him. Jay Powell just stated under oath that his policies do not affect housing supply. This is patently false. I agree with you a little bit on that, Pulte.
Yeah, I mean, Pulte's going to come out swinging.
Absolutely. Pulte hates him. There's no doubt. There is definitely a personal thing there between him and Pulte. There is no doubt about that, at least on Pulte's side.
Yeah.
I want to find this because this was so great. It was a classic Trump quote. I mean, you could tell he was getting heated, so you knew something was fixing to come up. Just didn't know what it was going to be. I was not betting on the F word coming out. I'm not going to lie to you. Of course, now I can't find it. You go away for 2 minutes and come back. Like, oh, where'd it go? Well, that's all the headlines. I'm going to find it. Here it is. So early this morning, President Trump said Israel and Iran have been fighting for so long and so hard that they no longer know what the fuck they're doing. Yep. There you go. That's a classical, man. All right. Well, that's good to hit your take profit. That's awesome.
Boom.
Yeah, so I'd taken a little heat and take private trade this morning. We've gotten all that back now. So every time we get anything, if we can break 30, we'll have a very positive day. We are kind of flagging up here, Roy. So I don't know what we do here. We're getting a red bubble. Do we get a green bubble to come right back behind it, or do we come down a little here? Last red bubble, they couldn't follow it back up. I just don't like it being up here just 30, not being able to break at 30. I mean, you can see we've kind of chugged along there, but just couldn't get through it. So this is a big red one. Let's see if this is a big green one to fall. If big green one, they might have enough momentum to break it this time, but it's got to be a big green bubble. That bubble's got to get a lot bigger than what it is. I don't know if anybody can see.
It's got spunk.
This red bubble over here, that's the size that green bubble needs to be. That's 1,277 volume. That last one was only 252 red. So
Tide is on the side of the green. Volume is increasing. Put premiums are dropping. Call volume is increasing. It looks like it wants to do it. I think we switch over to Periscope. You're seeing we're past that red gamma, approaching green gamma at 60.80. So it's about 4.5 SPX points away, which would be over that 61.30 on ES. Interesting to note, TNX is basically flat on the day, so not really caring much about what Powell says either way. Meta absolutely ripping. Tesla back below 350, 342.
let's just look and see where we're at on this. I think they're calls. I think everything's kind of elevated. So yeah, I'm not quite where I need to be to buy those back yet. We still got a little ways to go. I saw them at 5:30. They are at, oh, never mind. They're at 5:15 now. Okay. One thing I hate about Thinkorswim is their percents are skewed when you hold it more than a day.
Yeah.
I don't like that. But, that's neither here nor there. Let's see. I did try to sell some I wanted to sell some. Let's see. Did I sell those? I did actually sell some of those Tesla. I sold 50. I had 50 extra, so I went on and sold 50 at 350. Actually, nice. I think I got them out at, let's see what I got them out at. Let's see. I just wanted to cut a few to go and take some profit so I could have some extra money.
Absolutely. Kind of dip into some lead swings. You're ready to do it, aren't you?
350. I sold 354. So
nice.
That's not. That kind of goes back. We talked about it. I put orders, and those orders are good till I cancel them. I just leave them in there. I don't look at them. I don't have to go in there and move them and think about them and do all this stuff, blah, 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 back and forth. I try to make these, my long-term stuff, more hands off. Just put orders, leave it alone, let it do its thing. Did he say something? Because the market, well, your calls dropped. Look at your put premium. Your put premium is just tanked.
Yeah. He's saying the word inflation a little bit, but he's not saying it in necessarily a negative fashion.
Well, it doesn't always matter how he says it, Roy.
Yeah.
We've learned that.
Yeah.
Just saying the words. Just saying the words. You did get that green. Let's see. You got that big red bubble. It definitely could give us if it gives us a green one here at this 26 level, that would be actually pretty. There's your green coming out.
Yeah, here it comes.
Yeah, I think we're going to pop a little here. I'm still in this other long, so I'm not going to add to it. I'm just going to keep hoping we get this 30 break. I think eventually, look, I got my stop back at break even. So It doesn't really matter on my side, but I would like for it to break through and not just come all the way back. But I won't lose on this trade.
Well, it looks like they're holding up some support at 26, right?
26, yeah, and they're just not letting it break 30. Even though those orders have gone down from 30, they're not as what they were a minute ago. There was 250 of them sitting there a minute ago. Now it's just, it might be a good thing I got my stop there because this thing could come back now. It's not looking promising at the second. Right under 26 that we was just talking about. Another red bubble that looked like it was going to be green that turned back to green. They could pop this thing up now. I don't know.
It's always tough when he's talking. I mean, just
Yeah.
anything. Which is why, you know, we haven't really used our technical analysis too much because it's just been range bound right now. I mean, it's still playing out, of course, but just tough when you got live grenades happening.
Yeah. This looks like it's going to take me out on, well, maybe not. Top Step keeps playing games. They pulled these orders, not as many at 30 now as it was. It's down to 177, 187. And they're putting a few more back up there. But I keep thinking that we could get this down break, and it doesn't break. I'm thinking, okay, we can get this down break, and it doesn't break. And then kind of back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And you can tell that by you getting the green and yellow bubbles going back and forth.
Looks like they kind of pulled them, right? They've pushed them down in the 24 area.
Yep. I see Snoop asked a question about GLD. He's going to dive on some. Lead has an answer to that. That is a great answer, by the way.
Yeah. Let's see.
Until you see gold moving back up, oil up, VIX up, and crypto down, you have to assume it's peace in the Middle East for now. Anything else, and you're just guessing. Absolutely.
True. Yeah, that's exactly right.
That is probably the best statement you could give on that.
Yeah. That's one thing. Oil's a tricky beast, man. That is a tricky
Well, yeah,
beast.
you know, everybody's going long oil, going long oil, going long oil.
Yeah.
I mean, we're what? I think it was 15%, 10 to 15% down from its highs on Sunday night.
Yeah. It was. Granted, you know, the news has changed, right? The Strait looks like it's not going to get shut down. The peace in the Middle East.
We've talked about this, and
more likely.
I mean, we're not really popular enough to cause market moves, but I mean, you sit there and heard me say they're not going to close the Strait, right? Yeah. They've been saying they're going to close the Strait for 25 years now, and it's never closed. So why do you think it's going to change now?
Right.
It's not. Like Trump said, they had pretty much been in a war as long as they can remember.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't have anything new come out here. We just had people acting like something was different. And I mean, hell, we even said it. We said, look, after the U.S. bombed Iran, we said what's probably going to happen is they're going to come in, they're going to do a quote unquote peaceful bombing, right? They did. They called Qatar and said, hey, guess what? We're going to send 6 bombs your way. Here's where they're coming. Here's the GPS trackers on them when you want to shoot them down. And the bad thing about it, they only had to shoot down 5 because one of them was so far off track.
They just let it go.
But we're sitting there thinking that Iran is this big, huge nuclear power that,
yeah.
I mean, they sent 6 bombs. That 15% did not work at all.
Yeah.
Think about that. They didn't come close to it. And then they're like, well, what if they start sending bombs over here? It's like, well, they're going to get shot down over the ocean before they even get close to here. What are you talking about?
I love the statement by Trump that even admitted that they told him that the bombs are coming, and then he still called it a weak attack.
Yeah.
Damn, bro.
I'm not gonna lie to you on that one. I was like, you probably could have left that out, dude. Let that one go. That was just let them have their little moment in the sun. I love it. As soon as they sent them, Qatar came out and said, "We will retaliate." Blah blah blah. This is not.
Yeah.
And then everybody's like, "Really?" Like, nah, we knew it was coming. We shot them. They called us. They told us it was on the way.
Yeah.
Here we are testing this damn 30 level again. It is just not going to break that 30 level. This is just so annoying.
What was funny to me is, well, it's, trying to analyze this stuff. Obviously, you get into like theories more than you get facts. So it's always important to express that before I say something. But, this regime in Iran, I think pretty much saw the writing on the wall that if they continued, they were going to get ousted of power. And so this is their way to prolong it, even if it is for a couple days or a couple weeks or months.
I do like how we did not go in here and do a regime overturn. Like those never work.
No. I
mean, just look at the state, and we can say there's so much, with Ukraine, there's, this, that, or other, but it all goes back to we started this years ago with the regime change.
Mm-hmm.
Not like the way they were going, so we said we're going to step in and we're going to overturn their regime. Now we did it differently. We did it with Ukrainian people this time instead of going and bombing. Yeah. But we were the ones that funded all these protesters and stuff that got the regime change. And well, look where Ukraine is now. You think Ukraine's better off today than they were then? I don't think so.
Mm-hmm.
I went down a rabbit hole about. I gotta stay off social media sometimes. I know that. And we bombed Iran when all these people were putting the "I stand with Iran" stuff on their Facebooks and Twitter. It was like, you've got to be kidding me. Like, I will never understand somebody like, "I stand with Iran." There was a former military guy came out and said, "I stand with Iran. We are nothing but a bully, blah, blah, blah." And then somebody asked him, like, "Bro, what is Iran?" Mm-hmm. Like, what is Iran? Iran is a bully to their own people. Like,
yeah.
I don't know if I saw a little documentary, and this was not as much. It just showed Iran 50 years ago compared to what Iran is today.
Mm-hmm.
Dude, it is so much different. Like, it looked like a suburban America town,
mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And now it's like it was a woman. She was walking a group of kindergarten kids like to a park in Iran.
Mm-hmm.
And you could see, like, face wasn't covered up. She was dressed, respectfully, nothing crazy, but the kids and the car was coming on to get through. She pointed the car, "No, you stop," right?
Mm-hmm.
And the thing was, if a lady was out like that today and she talked to a man like that in Iran today, oh, what just happened? Just came down and took me out. And we had a big drop. That's why you have stops, boys and girls. I don't know what he said. The market just tanked.
Leverage ratio reform.
What the hell is that?
I don't know. That's what he was saying. As soon as he said that, that's what.
And now it's going to pop right back up. Are you kidding me? Anyway, back to that lady. Like, it said if she were to do that today, she would be beheaded, right? Because you can't talk to a man that way. You don't show your face and all that. And it's like, and people are like, sure, yeah, Iran's a better place today than it was 20 years ago, 50 years ago. Like, yeah, you got a solid point there. This son of a gun, you got to be shitting me.
He said, when time is right, expect rate cuts to continue.
Well, I see that, but I mean, what caused?
Yeah, he said whatever.
And we're just rippy back up now. I mean, right back up to where we were. We're getting, and that was a lot of volume that came in that damn candle. Let's see where the volume came in at. It's, believe it or not, Roy, the volume was 50-50 pretty much. Interesting.
They're talking up Bowman a lot. I think it's the third time I've heard that name in this hearing.
Who was that?
Fed Bowman. Wonder if
Is
that's
Bowman
the
the one that came out saying they wanted cuts?
yeah. I think it's a she. Let me do. Yeah, Fed Bowman, she. Favors July rate cut. Oh, your favorite's on. I won't do it to you. we're past the 11 Eastern, 10 o'clock Central, so I won't do it to you.
Yeah, it's about time for us to call it today. We had enough.
I just want to see this damn 30 break.
I do too.
Oh
shit!
There's your 30 break.
We got
Maxine Waters coming in hot.
Oh, that's crazy. Oh, I can't say what I want to say about her. You dirty dog, you two. I was backing along.
I was too. It took me out.
And it missed me by 2 points. I had it way up. I got it up at 35, Roy.
Oh, wow. I had a 32.50. It just ripped right through me.
Like Mexican food.
Like Indian food on a summer day.
Damn sweet. He agrees with. Took him an hour to agree with lead.
Yeah, gold is getting smacked a little bit, which you expect, right? It went on a tear on geopolitical news. Now that geopolitical news has calmed down.
Do you think this came out earlier and then we're just seeing it? The EU readies retaliatory tariffs to secure a better trade deal with Trump?
No, I think that's just coming out.
We also had the Treasury. They're going to do 60 billion 4-week bills. That's usually a pop. That's where we got that pop back up. Germany's Chancellor Merz backs more muscular approach ahead of the July talks deadline. I don't know what all the stuff. And then CNBC headlines: How a gay anti-bullying PSA from the late 2000s became a cult classic. I mean, just CNBC just doing their own thing out there. The Senate will be attending the Senate lunch today. Okay.
There's rumors he could be the Fed chair next.
I've seen that. I think the Fed chair is going to come out of one. I think you've got these. See, Roy, I think that you got these Fed chairmen out there now. I think they're jockeying. One of them's jockeying for a position. I feel like one might get promoted. I think that's one of their. You're seeing a few come out now with pro-Trump rate cuts.
Yeah,
is one thing you can kind of consider it as. All of a sudden, we believe that we should be cutting rates. All of a sudden, we hadn't voted for it at all. But now we should have been thinking about this all the time. It's been 0 votes for a rate cut, and then it's like, no, we've been thinking it. We just didn't say it out loud. We've been thinking it the whole time because we would do a lot better in that position than Powell was to put us there. I promise you.
Did they clear orders on book map? Is that what that's?
Did they what?
Did that clear orders on Bookmap? Or are
Clear
they,
some, so when you see all
Yeah.
the colors go away, yes, that's
Yeah.
that is. Don't know why we'd be clearing orders now.
yeah.
Which is to get some kind of attack or something nobody knows about.
Is this our
Yes,
pizza indicator? Get a pizza indicator.
We probably need to look at that. What is Freddy's Beach Ball? What's the gay bar at? Is it low or high volume?
Yeah, no tweet in 10 hours. I think we're good.
He said, I think we'll start to see more tariff inflation starting in June. I think we'll see the tariff inflation in the June and July numbers. Boy, you better hope they do. Because if they don't, you're going to look silly.
When is the July meeting?
I haven't even looked, to be honest with you.
I got you. FOMC calendar. July. It's end of July, 29th and 30th. So basically September.
Okay. Oh, wow. Yeah, because we don't have one in August, right? We have July to September.
Right. Very late. Yeah. Late July. So. And that's not an SEP, so that's just a rate decision. I will say this. The Fed, or this testimony so far has been very even keel. No nasty stuff. No arguing.
I mean, you heard what I thought my take was going to be this morning. It has not been that.
Yeah. I kind of commend all parties here for actually asking pretty sensible questions.
Well, especially when Trump came out this morning and said, give him hell, pretty much.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it was don't hold back.
Whoa.
I don't know what's happening. We just had a pop and a drop and a pop. And needless to say, I did not get taken out on either side, long or short.
Yeah, I didn't either. I was happy.
I hadn't got back in on Top Step yet. I am going to take Profit Trader 1. I've only traded one account on there. I did trade my test account last night. Got $200 on it. Just testing out Bookmap levels in Globex. Me and Roy's been kind of playing with that idea. Possibly doing something Globex hours. Last couple of nights I've been testing it on just test or a combine, not any funded accounts.
Yeah.
We cannot get a sustained green bubble here. Like we get one that covers it right back up. We're kind of Powell said, we don't need to be in any rush. I am perfectly open to the idea that tariff inflation pass-through will be less than when we think. If it turns out inflation pressures are contained, we will get to a place where we cut rates. This came over the wire.
Munchin an hour ago on CNBC, the former Treasury Secretary.
Oh, yeah.
He said, we'll see 100 basis points lower in rates, and it's common for the Fed to say they're going to wait, then suddenly cut.
Okay. Interesting. We don't need that here. We just need that. We'll be out of this one. A little pop here will be done with done on the day for the futures desk. If we can get up to 28.50, which we got really close to it. We're close here.
Get it for him.
That would get me 150 on the day. There it is. So that one is done. We got one account locked up. Don't even look at it anymore. How about that? Roy, we have slow. This might be the slowest I've ever done anything. We're now over $1,000 in that account.
Nice job, man.
1,500. I don't even remember what I got to hit in that account now, to be honest with you. I might need to look.
That was the one you started a little rough on, right?
$400 down the first day, and have just grinded it up since.
Yeah.
So I've got a 61% win rate in that account. That's the overall accounts. That's the one I did really bad on. My average win is $60 per trade.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I was reading it. I was just there. It went away. Largest win was a 307.80. I'm on a 7-day win streak. Like that. Only thing is my risk reward is off a little bit. I need to get that up. But hey.
There's your 30 test again.
Yep. And we've gotten everything back in Take Profit Trader. Anything positive here is all gravy, sir.
Nice.
All gravy.
Oh, what am I? I'm on my 4th day on Take Profit Trader on this test account, and I'm $300 away from passing.
There you go. I'm taking my time on mine. I mean, when I say taking my time on mine, I am taking my time on mine. I am at 1540, and this is the 5th day I traded. But just doing here or there. I'm trying not to focus on this too much because sometimes my problem is I spread myself too thin on stuff.
Oh, yeah.
So we're trying not to do that now. Let's see. If you do want a futures desk trader today, they ends their 50% off sale.
I don't know if I can do a third one, dude.
It is. It's not as bad as I thought it would be, Roy.
Okay.
But I've got it on a small screen, so I don't have to pay that much attention to it.
Right.
I just get in a trade or something else, I automatically just go and pop one in there just to get in it.
Gotcha.
And I set my take profits a lot smaller. That makes sense. So we're just trying to be, do what we can do.
How many lots do you do?
3 lots at a time.
3. Okay.
3.
I know you were trying to find the sweet spot there.
3 seems to be it. It gives me a lot of wiggle room.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, I could have made more in this one today, but I just went on. I only needed, it's actually 146.55. Let's see what the thing about this one is I really like about them is you get so much information.
Mm-hmm.
When I say it breaks down, you can look at almost anything you want to look at. I mean, it's pretty damn good. What I do like about them too, also, once you get it, what you pay, once you pass, you do not pay an activation fee. So my target goal was 1750. I went over a little bit, so now they got me at 1790, which is still fine. It's supposed to be 12 days. I have been doing this one now this is my 10th day. So it just kind of breaks it down. I think it has taught me. So this one, so anybody doesn't know, on this one, you do a test, like an evaluation. Once you pass that, you are put into a SIM account, but you do not take money out of that SIM account. So my 1,750 goal, once I hit 1,750 in that SIM account, that moves over to a live account.
Nice.
And you can take daily payouts, everything like you do Take Profit Trader. It's your live money. Anything over 1,750 you can take out every day. No trailing drawdowns. It's end of day drawdown on everything.
Ooh.
You can only have 2 accounts there, and they pay your CME fees for you on your account. So
how much was
go ahead.
I was going to say, how much was the account again?
Well, I paid $69 for mine. I did the smaller one. So let's look. I'm going to show you what you can do. Where is it at? Go to accounts, new plans. So right now it's suggesting that I do $1,500 max loss. I could do 2 minis, 20 micros. Your goal is $221 a day for 12 days. It is end of day. Your daily drawdown on this one is, where do you go? Is $600. Actually, I like the max loss, the 1750 one. So the 220, you could do 2 or 25, same price. It only goes up and you go up to another mini. 129, that's your all-in price.
Okay.
Now you can actually split that where after you pass it, you pay, but it costs more if you do that because you're splitting it up. So you pay a 109 and a 59 once you pass. I really like them. They use Project X, just like Top Step X. For some reason, I've never had a lag issue on the future decimal. Never. I'm gonna be honest with you, I've never had any issue with the future decimal.
Weird.
It is weird. And it's identical, right? You get the same stuff, everything's the same. It's just, I don't know. I've never had any issues with it. Maybe it's because I don't know if Top Step goes through their server first before it comes to you, maybe. And this one doesn't, I can think of. Anything that has to go through multiple things before it goes through.
Right.
Another. Right. So, I don't know. You guys know I really like Project X. I like that platform. So, oh shit! I just looked up $50 up. I go up here and hit 34. That'll put me $100 up in the day on that damn count. Take profit trader. How about that?
Hot damn. Just chilling.
Just sitting here talking to you guys about Project X and making money. Love it. Just grinding up. The only thing that really pissed me off, it took me out on Top Step, and I would still been in Top Step. I probably would have took profit on some of this, and I would have cut more of my deficit, but I did have a tight stop in them, so can't really complain that much about it. But
I was going to ask you something if you want to keep going, or I can wait for tomorrow. It's up to you, but
you might as well go and ask now because you'll forget by tomorrow.
I was going to say, how did you curb your, or maybe you didn't have it, but where you kept averaging down and keep re-entering a trade to basically maybe you start with 5 MES and then all of a sudden you're at 15, 20. What was it for you that just kind of made that like no more? Obviously, it came on probably the back of a losing day, or do you still fall into that trap? Or
no, I need to get back into it. It's just I've been more conservative lately. Like this morning at open. All right, go to my chart. All right, right here we had this move down. We had the bubble. Bookmap gave us a bubble to go along here, right? We should have done it when it popped back down and it gave another signal. You could have added 5 more. 5 more. You could do it all the way up, but then like you get your 5, then when it pops up, you take 5 off. Now this is your entry, right?
Gotcha.
You hit 5 again, it pops up, you take 5 off. Kind of stair step it up where you're keeping 5 the whole time, but you're adding to it to make it, and you just in that trade. It counts like you're in that trade all day, when technically it's different trades in that trade.
Right.
But if you're following Bookmap, yes, these are big moves down, but if you notice the pattern, right? Boom, drop, pop, drop, pop, drop, pop, drop, pop, drop, pop. Every time we're getting this drop, we're getting this pop right back up. It makes sense to continue to do that. I've done it a little bit in Take Profit Trader here. I'm holding 5 now, where I've had up to 10. I've been doing 5, 10, 5, 10, 5, 10. But I don't do it as much in Top Step, and I don't know why I don't do it as much in Top Step, which I should do it. I'm making more money in Take Profit Trader. I can't really complain what I've been doing at Top Step, because even though I am down $230 today, I've got 16 straight rays green of 200 plus.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Kind of hard to change anything with that, right? So I don't know. I trade these accounts completely different. Completely different. I don't know if that's good or bad. I trade the futures desk more like I trade Top Step, except this futures desk, if it starts to pop and I can get $50, I'm gonna take $50 because I only need 3 trades to hit 150, right?
Mm-hmm.
In my mind, that just breaks it down easier. So I'm just kind of put little hurdles for myself there. This one I want Top Step. I want to hold a little bit longer, and that was our entry right there a second ago, by the way. Long.
And I was looking at
I
it.
love it with this timing though, but
Yeah. Well, it is European close coming in.
yeah, we already should have gotten that pop. We did get it here, but I think that pop was that drop, then we got that pop. I think that could be. I didn't even pay attention to that, Roy. That could have been your European close. They could have, and then it popped right back up to where in line where it was going. 10 o'clock is that's it, right?
Yeah.
So we almost always get a pop 10 or right after 10. Well, this one, it was right after 10. Actually, I take that back. You got the pop at 10. And then the drop, and then it popped up. So I guess going forward, we just got to put it down long at 10 o'clock and just be quick on it, right?
Why are we long here? Huh? It's 10 o'clock, mate.
So here, going back to the futures desk, Roy. So you got the TDF, the X connection, 10 days path to life. You want to go 10. It costs more. The less days you go, the account costs more. So you don't get a 50,000, 100,000 or so count. Your account is based off of your drawdown period, right? That's all it's worried about. It's not worried about anything else. Your balance on everything is always 0. You can go negative 1750 or whatever. You got a minimum days. Like right now, I've got it 2 minis, 25 micros I could trade. It's a $3,100 profit goal, 1750 in a day drawdown. You got a $700 day loss limit. Doesn't fail you, but they say, hey, you lose $700, you need to take a break.
Yeah.
No matter what. There's no minimum hold times, no consistency percentages. Algo trading isn't allowed. You can trade bonds, heavily discounted commission. You get CME and CFTC alignment, which means they're aligned with CME. So, what you're seeing is what you're getting. It's no flood. Real-time tagging. So, where you might have on other things like Trade-O-Bait, you might be a little lagging on your fields. And a lot of people are like, I only need 34 here to have a damn good day here. Hit 34. I'll probably be ready to cut it now, but you get simulator, daily goals, premium support. What I really like about it, Roy, is once you go live, you have a personal coach you deal with. One person. Hey, $110 in that account. You have uncapped daily payouts. You can once you go live, make whatever the hell you want to make. If you make $50,000, guess what? You can take out $50,000. Okay. There's no caps. You get a live brokerage account, one-on-one private coaching. All that you can get for $129. That's all in price.
Okay.
I don't hate that. I don't know about you, but I don't hate that.
No, I don't know.
And I think what it's helped me, I've been so disciplined going forward with this thing that, like here lately, it's just I've been taking base hits on it, making my 140 to 150 a day. I'm not trying to hit home runs. I'm taking what the market gives me. I think it's setting me up to be a better trader, to be honest with you. There's no trailing shit ever. There's never a trailing drawdown. If you want to make more than the 150 a day or 200 a day or whatever it is at that time, you can do that. Just your profit goal goes up a little bit. They just want to see consistency across this fresh trading platform, and then they move you up. You got to think how quick you go to live. So it is almost 10:30, so I think it is time we call it today. Anybody got
Yeah.
any questions? We got 60-something people watching.
All right. Kept up.
More on Twitter.
If anybody's out there wants us to keep the hearing on, we'll keep the hearing on. I've got it set up to do that. If we don't, we can just end it. I'll leave that up to you, Monty.
I'm not going to be here, so you can do whatever. I got to do some stuff around the house. So
what I'll do is let's leave the hearing up. If anybody wants to tune in and they can watch it, I won't break anything from there. So, all right, I'll get that set up. That'll be the best way to do that.
Here, just leave studio.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you could leave if you wanted because it'll be on my computer.
I know, but don't end stream. Is what I'm saying.
Yeah. Yes. All right, so let me stop. Let me present. Boom. There we go. I think that is. Let me leave this. Leave studio. That's gone. All right, guys. Well, we're going to keep this up and running. I'll come back and remove it when we're done. But, Monty, good trading today. Nice chatting with you.
Sir.
Love our talks always. Appreciate you. I'll talk with you on Discord.
Yes,
Anybody
sir.
wants to keep watching. All right. Take it easy, guys.
See you, bro.
Again, I think if I look at the data here, WTI per barrel about 120. It peaked at about $120 in 2022. What do your models suggest would occur to inflation, and
We would look at that and we would ask ourselves, look at the overall situation, we would ask ourselves, should we react to that? So for example, during what we called the Arab Spring back in the early teens, oil prices went up a lot and that went into the price and then there was a discussion, and I think the right answer was to look through that. The question you'd be asking to yourself, because by the time you react, the price comes back down. I think the question today would be, is the situation different and what would be the implications of those differences?
Gentleman's time has expired. I thank the gentleman from Connecticut. Chair recognizes the gentleman from North Carolina. Mr. Moore, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Powell, I want to touch on international standard setting bodies like the Basel Committee on Banking Supervision. Their goal is to promote better harmonization for global capital flows and regulatory standards. But the Biden administration's implementation of Basel III endgame demonstrated the pitfalls when the U.S. is a follower instead of a leader in the international arena. That's why both Democrats and Republicans shot down former Vice Chair Michael Barr's proposal, which made capital less acceptable and put U.S. firms and businesses at a global disadvantage. Do you agree that the United States should only implement international standards in a way that is consistent with our own domestic legal and regulatory scheme?
I do.
I appreciate the Federal Reserve's announcement yesterday to end the use of reputational risk during banking examinations. This supervisory practice was used as a tool to pressure banks to refrain from offering financial services to politically disfavored individuals or industries. What further steps is the Federal Reserve taking to help usher in these changes, such as ending examination practices that informally encourage banks to close certain accounts without written justification?
So we're developing, I should say Vice Chair Bowman is developing a range of policies that will help in that area, and I should let her speak to it. But as you know, we've eliminated reputation risk largely in a thoughtful way from those things. I think we became more aware of that problem over the course of last year, and like the other agencies, decided to move away from that. We're very conscious of the fact that we shouldn't be telling banks who they can lend to, that's a decision for them in the private sector.
Let me ask you this, how are you ensuring though that like the frontline examiners are aligned with this new direction and not continuing with any past practices?
I will say that is the ultimate question is will and I think they will. And I think as a former bank examiner, Vice Chair Bowman is actually very well positioned to engage with supervisors and in a way that someone with experience can do successfully. Whereas if you don't have that experience, I think it might be harder.
Thank you. Secretary Bessent recently announced a drive to change the culture of supervision through improvements to examination procedures, enhanced monitoring of examiners' compliance with those procedures, and more realistic processes for appealing supervisory findings. That includes defining unsafe and unsound by rule using more objective measures rooted in financial risk. Do you support this initiative, and will we be seeing further rule changes at the Federal Reserve to achieve this goal?
So I like the sound of all that. I will say on issues of supervision, Vice Chair Bowman has, significant authority, and also she's got the background and the understanding. And first thing I would do is I would ask her what she thinks about that.
Just sort of a changing direction on a couple of questions. During the volatility in the Treasury markets last April, some have speculated that foreign investors were dumping Treasury securities. Since then, though, recent data has showed that foreign investors holding of U.S. Treasuries held close to a record high in April. Does this data show that Treasury's safe haven status and the dollar's global reserve currency status remained strong while the administration conducted trade negotiations?
I would say yes to that. I think we need to be careful about these narratives that pop up quickly. I mean, we're the world's reserve currency and the world's greatest democracy, and I think the dollar is always going to be, for a long time, is going to be the reserve currency and the place where people want to be.
Let me ask you this. Do you believe there's a possibility that Treasury markets will crack, just as Jamie Dimon has recently warned at the Reagan National Economic Forum?
I don't want to say things like that. I don't think that's something that's happening. Treasury markets are functioning well and normally, and they did function through a period of pretty substantial stress. And as you pointed out, Mr. Moore, that they're focusing well now.
Thank you. With that, I yield back. And actually, if Ms. Salazar is still here, I'll give her my remaining time. If not, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The chair recognizes Ms. Williams of Georgia. You're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Chairman Powell, for being here. It's been a while since I've had the opportunity to ask questions sitting at the bottom of the room, but I am happy to have this conversation today because the last time we talked last July, I mentioned that combating economic inequality is a critical part of the Fed's dual mandate, and that is something that I am deeply, deeply interested in. Back then, we were talking about how we can get everyone in our economy to have the opportunity to contribute to their fullest potential, because that's how we get our economy firing on all cylinders and work to continue to close the racial wealth gap, which my home city of Atlanta continues to lead the nation in. That seems like such a far cry from where we are today, almost a year later. Forget our economy firing on all cylinders. Now our economy and our nation seem to just be on fire. We're looking at tariffs that are raising the prices of groceries, fuel, housing, and everyday goods. Chairman Powell, I get feedback every time I'm in a hearing about my nails because I like to get my nails done. And my nail tech told me about the increase in cost of so many of the different products that would be used just for me to get my manicure monthly, because tariffs are frightening so many of our small businesses, which we know are the backbone of our economy. And so it's hurting my community in Atlanta. But it doesn't seem like our president and my Republican colleagues are really interested in making sure that our economy fires on all cylinders, as long as billionaires continue to get richer, because that's what we've seen and all of the gutting that has been done to the federal government. And Chairman Powell, I'm sure that this is coming to your department as well. With the recent events that we've seen, we know that it is very dangerous to gut the federal government, agencies that we depend on, and politicizing the work of agencies such as yours. Chairman Powell, this current president has tried to reclassify tens of thousands of non-political public servants just to make it easier to fire them. And that includes people who have served in Democratic and Republican administrations. It even includes people who serve in independent agencies just like yours. Chair Powell, as a chair who our current and previous president routinely has threatened to fire, I think I just heard something on CNN today while you were here testifying. But what effect has this policy had on the career civil servants in your agency? And are these threats making it easier or harder for the Fed to do monetary policy?
They're having no effect. We're doing our jobs.
You're doing your jobs. I appreciate you doing your job, even when it might not be easy. It is important to tune out the things that you hear on the media, because I hear it every day representing a district that has a lot of federal employees, a lot of people who work at your agency. I hear from people all the time. Thank you so much. And not only do I have thousands of federal employees in my district, but my district has one of the widest racial wealth gaps in the country. Much of that has to do with our worsening housing crisis. And unfortunately, as we've seen with the past 6 months, this administration has been focused on this big billionaire bailout bill, gutting HUD, and releasing a budget that does not help the supply of fair and affordable housing nationwide. Now we've heard the president talk about having the power to control interest rates. In your opinion, Chairman Powell, what would you expect the effects would be on the housing market if the president were to lower interest rates without addressing the housing supply crisis nationwide?
Sorry, if he were to what?
If the president has talked about having the power to control interest rates. In your opinion, what would you expect the effects would be on the housing market if the president were to lower interest rates without addressing the housing supply crisis nationwide?
Honestly, it's not our job to speculate on things the president might do.
So
Sorry.
what impact do interest rates have on on housing access?
Over the long run, they don't really affect the housing supply. You know, assuming that rates will go up and down.
Well, not on the supply, but on the housing market. The supply is separate that we need to address going into this. If we're going to move interest rates up and down, that's not going to be the end all be all to getting people into housing. We must address the housing supply crisis. But what impact do interest rates have on the housing market in general?
Well, interest rates really affect housing demand. So with lower rates, you see more demand, and higher rates, maybe less demand.
Thank you, Chairman Powell. I am out of time, but I have lots of questions that continue to work to close the racial wealth gap in this country, specifically focused on my district in Atlanta, where it is so prevalent. Thank you so much.
Gentlewoman's time has expired. The gentleman from Indiana, Mr. Stutzman, is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Chairman Powell, great to see you. And again, as I've mentioned to you before, always appreciate your steady hand at the wheel and not, I guess, getting out of your lane necessarily, but obviously you have a huge impact on the economy and what's happening there at the Fed. I want to kind of follow up a little bit on housing, as I've been hearing a lot about housing concerns in Northeast Indiana, and I know you're not you're used to being beat up on a lot by folks all around the country, but I want to speak specifically to one particular individual, Grant Cardone. He made some pretty strong remarks about your policy when it comes to the housing industry, and he said, that's why you have 500,000 more homes listed than buyers for those homes. When the rates come down, prices will also come down with it, because you'll have more supply in the marketplace, and supply is what controls prices. He went on to say that interest rates do not control prices, and he explained that lower rates could stimulate activity in the market, and activity is what makes the economy work. And I agree with his comments, overall, but I believe, as you said earlier, the economy seems stable, and I would agree with that coming from an ag and manufacturing area. It's not booming yet, but I believe most people are optimistic that the good times are coming and that the structure is set and in place. But when it comes to housing, it seems like that's where a lot of Americans they're stuck. They've had low rates, they've got a good mortgage rate, but if they want to make a move, they have to go out of that 3% interest rate into 4.5%, 5% or higher percent interest rate. Thoughts on addressing housing, because their prices are up for sure, but people there's no activity. There's the velocity is very slow. Would you like to comment on any of that?
Sure. So we see the same thing you do in the housing market. It's tough. There's not people are locked in. They can't afford to get out of their house because the cost of getting to a higher mortgage. higher price mortgage would be a lot. So the best thing we can do, though, is to get inflation sustainably down to 2% and have it stay there over a long period of time, And that is really what we can offer to them. And I think, so if you go back to the beginning of the pandemic, when we cut to zero and we did all those programs, we really saved the housing industry because they're the front line for interest rates. At a time like this, when rates are, I would say modestly restrictive, not even moderately, but modestly restrictive, they feel it and their customers feel it. We understand that, but we only have one tool for the whole economy, not just for housing. So it's something we consider, but we have to consider the bigger picture. And I do think in the medium term, as rates come down, you'll see normalization in housing. Of course, there'll still be a national housing shortage. I don't know about your district, but
Yeah. No, there's a shortage.
Yeah.
I mean, considering the macroeconomics of interest rates, I mean, how much consideration do you take housing into that decision as you address interest rates?
We're always briefed on it. We always talk about it. We always look at it. But at the end of the day, it's the big U.S. economy, the whole aggregate thing that matters. We also talk about the agricultural economy a lot as well. But ultimately, and manufacturing, it's got to be the whole, and not any one particular piece.
Yeah, I just would mention it is hard for American families to make that move, and they're stuck. And so I would just highly consider ask you to consider that piece of it, because when Americans can't move and Americans can't upgrade or move laterally even, it really keeps the economy kind of holds the economy back a bit when Americans don't have that. But again, I want to say thank you, because you have a tough job, but I haven't heard from anyone in my district asking interest rates to go up. So I'll just pass that along from Indiana's 3rd district. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I'll yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The chair now recognizes gentleman from Colorado. Ms. Peterson is now recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and great to see you, Chair Powell. Thank you so much for being here today. I want to thank you for your long service to our country. I know that you've served under many Democrats, Republicans. You've always been nonpartisan and done your job to put our country first, and we appreciate your steadfast leadership. And if you are not reappointed, it will be very missed here. I have some concerns when I think about, I know you've touched on this a little bit through the questions today, but around the independence of the Federal Reserve. Your job, no matter what president you served under, Republican or Democrat, was to make sure that this was not a political position, while you brought news that some would not be happy about because it reflected what you had to do to address inflation. When I think about the conversations we've had going through the global pandemic and the economic fallout, and how we had to infuse money throughout our country to keep our services afloat, our businesses afloat. And while we suffered from inflation like the rest of the world, we had the quickest, strongest recovery. We were leading the globe, and so much of that was because of your leadership. And so when I think about what this position means, how important it is that there is independence, what are your biggest concerns about a potential successor that doesn't prioritize that and wants to do what is politically asked of them versus what they need to do for the country? And what are their long-term repercussions if you're not acting on addressing the economic uncertainties and trying to address inflation in this position?
So I wouldn't speculate on that, but I would say, the credibility of the Fed on price stability is very, very important. People believe that we will bring inflation back down to 2% over time. And if they really do believe it and it's true, then that'll have big effects on not just short-term rates but long-term rates. If that were to be called into question, then you'd see long-term rates go up. I mean, that credibility once lost is very expensive to regain, is what the historical record says. So I just think I think people should understand that credibility on inflation is hard won and something we need to constantly tend. And, you know, that's what we're doing with our current policy, is just being careful with potential inflation risks. We haven't overreacted. In fact, we haven't reacted at all. But we're being a little bit careful about that set of questions as we decide what to do next.
And thank you for bringing that up. As we look at where we were, how far we had come in our economy, things were starting to stabilize, and we were starting to finally see a relief on the interest rates. They were starting to go down. Now they're holding steady. Can you talk about why the instability, you know, when we look at tariffs around the increase in the deficit by the proposed big ugly bill that is being brought through Congress right now, and increasing our debt by trillions of dollars, and having our credit downgraded again because we are increasing our deficit. So with this economic uncertainty, where we were going, we were on the way down or reducing our rates, and now we have to hold steady to address the instability. Is that correct?
I'm sorry, could you just briefly restate your question there? I apologize.
Yes, I'm going to do this the best I can with with Sam here. That with our having to address inflation, as we've started to see it, you were able to decrease the rates. We were starting to go down a little bit. We were seeing that our economy was finally in a solid place. Prices were starting to go down. And now with the economic uncertainty, we're starting to see that you had to hold steady, whereas everyone was projecting before this administration came in with these changes that it was going to continue to go down. Can you talk about why you have had to choose to hold steady on the interest rates?
So we just, you know, we stick to what we're assigned to do, which is maximum employment and price stability. We don't have opinions on fiscal policy or trade policy or immigration policy or any one of another regulation policy, other than we have our regulatory responsibilities. And so we take what comes as it comes. And, you know, elected politicians do what they do, and we don't criticize that. We don't have opinions about
Gentleman's
that.
time has expired, and the gentleladies.
Thank you, and thank you, Sam.
Chair now recognizes the gentlewoman from Texas, Mrs. De La Cruz, for 5 minutes.
Thank you so much. And thank you, Chair Powell, for being here with us today. I am Congresswoman Monica De La Cruz, and I am from deep South Texas, a largely Hispanic district, a rural community right there on the border of Texas and Mexico. I serve as the Vice Chair for Housing and Insurance Subcommittee, and it's difficult for families right now to afford a home on an average paycheck. I'm committed to finding affordable housing solutions for the people in my community, but also for all over the nation. So, Chair Powell, mortgage rates remain significantly elevated relative to Treasury yields, with spreads well above historical norms. To what extent does the Federal Reserve believe its balance sheet policy, particularly the runoff of MBS holdings, is contributing to this widening, and how does that factor into your broader assessment of financial conditions?
I don't think that our runoff of MBS is a particularly large contributor to that situation. I also think it's not just interest rates. It's so many things around housing now. It's insurance, it's materials, it's land acquisition, it's labor. There's so many cost pressures that are pushing up housing costs.
Thank you. With that being said, moving on to an entirely different topic, if the Federal Reserve focuses on issues outside its dual mandate, there are more opportunities for policy mistakes. How can you ensure that no other climate policy work is being done at the Federal Reserve?
So it is a big risk to our independence if we were to stray into areas where we shouldn't, that really aren't part of our mandate. And I would agree that climate is the biggest risk. So we really did the bare minimum. We did much less than I think people understand in the climate area. All we did was was one piece of guidance, and then we ran one stress scenario, and by the way, didn't find anything. And I think you don't look to us to try to take on a bigger role or really to play any role in climate, which I personally think is an important issue and one that needs to be dealt with by elected officials. And for bank regulators just to step in and take that on without a mandate from Congress is not a good idea. It's not a good solution, and it's not a good way to remain independent.
Reclaiming my time, what kind of climate guidance did you make?
So for just the big banks, I believe, we asked them to monitor to have a framework for which they would monitor their risks from lending. That's all it was. And I would say that guidance is something we're looking at pulling back.
When you say the risk for lending based on political climate change, is that correct?
Well, the idea was that, the changing climate could, I'm not defending this, I'm telling you what the idea was. The idea was, climate change would cause certain kinds of assets to lose value, and that if banks are lending to in those areas or to those industries, then they should at least be able to measure. Didn't ban anybody from doing anything. It wasn't prescriptive. At the same time, you have the feeling that the side effect of it would be to discourage lending, and we don't want that to be the case. So that's why we're looking at it.
Well, it does sound like that is policy that is based on political agenda. And when it comes to banking, it should not be based on political agenda, but instead on facts such as credit, facts as good monetary policy. So I would have to disagree with you on the fact that the Federal Reserve stayed outside of political agendas. When it comes to climate change, that is a political agenda, and I would have to disagree with you on that. Thank you. I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from California, Mr. Sherman, who's also ranking member of the Capital Markets Subcommittee, for 5 minutes.
We don't notice good bank regulation. Things just go smoothly. But in 2023, we saw the effects of inadequate bank regulation, where we lost 3 banks. There was a proposal that passed the House that would have cut the pay rate of your bank inspectors and regulators down to 70% of the rate paid at FDIC. So you would have been 70% of what the other major bank regulation agency did. I know you've announced things about headcount, but I'm focusing here on just the rate of pay. Fortunately, we were saved by not Superman, but Superwoman, Elizabeth McDonough, the Senate parliamentarian. But what effect would it have had on our ability to have good bank regulation if you had to go to all the folks in doing bank regulation at the Fed and say that their pay is going to be cut to 70% of the rate of pay over at the FDIC?
Would have made it harder for us to attract or to retain personnel. It also would have knocked down something we've had for 90 years, which is a sort of a moat that allows us to take care of HR issues on our own without Congress.
Gotcha. I've got a couple of questions I'd ask you to respond for in the record. The first is Section 899 of the big ugly bill, big beautiful bill, whatever you want to call it, enforcement of remedies against unfair foreign taxes. What this does is it imposes a tax on those residents of about 24 foreign countries should they invest in the United States, including in our treasuries. And we're trying to attract capital from abroad. This is to push out capital abroad. It doesn't affect China. It just affects 24 of our friends, particularly in Europe. The other thing I'd like you to respond for is the record is the tariffs and the effect that that has not only on the inflation rate, but therefore on interest rates. And at your press conference, you said increases in tariffs this year are likely to push up prices and weigh on economic activity, and I'd certainly like to know more about that. The Treasury has our reserves, but you also have a liquidity fund, which I believe involves buying and selling foreign currencies. And so that begs the question whether, if you're allowed to buy the euro, whether you're allowed to buy cryptocurrencies. And of course, the president has said that some agency of the federal government should have a strategic crypto reserve. Do you or your successors have the legal right to take assets of the Fed and buy Bitcoin or Trump coin?
No, we don't, and we do not seek this authority.
I hope very much that your successor is not someone who tries to stretch existing statutes and come to an opposite answer. I'd like to focus a little bit on when you came before our committee last, I guess, in February. I asked you if you would take a holistic look at bank capital requirements, including the risk-based capital ratios like Basel III Endgame and stress testing, to make sure that you don't have a contraction in the ability to provide credit to Main Street businesses, and you said you would do that. So my question this time is, how does the Fed plan to sequence the various capital requirement reform proposals that we expect to see in the coming months? In what order will you proceed with reforms on Basel III weight risk capital, leverage ratio, stress testing, and the GSIB service charge, knowing that these have interactive effects? Can you tell us what the sequence will be?
So I really do. This is the heart of what the Vice Chair for Supervision is assigned to do, is to bring proposals to the board. And I read that as giving her she's the one who will decide that sequencing. You're right there. There are many things, and it's really up to her to decide what's the timing, what's the priority. And I don't actually know exactly what she's only been confirmed for a couple of weeks, so we're just getting going.
With you as the head of the agency, even if she is supposed to decide the sequencing, that your agency would tell us what the sequencing is going to be, and understand how important it is for people to know what the order, those various regulations will have, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Iowa, Mr. Nunn, for 5 minutes.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Chairman Powell, for joining us again here. We have a saying, Iowa is nice, kind of boring. We want our Fed chairman to be just the same, and you're doing a great job at that. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Nothing gets boring. We like that too. Look, you have a lot of great staff that come from Iowa as well. I appreciate you having them on your team. We also want to recognize the fact that, folks in Iowa are still feeling the challenges of the last 4 years. We're middle America. It is the heartland of the country, but it also means that impacts that change things on the coast don't always get felt the same way in the Midwest. And so as a result, folks are stretching every dollar as they face everything from higher grocery prices, eggs, to trying to buy just that first car or even maybe that first home. And interest rates to them matter as they do everywhere else, but they're even more. Now, I will offer the president has made great strides in making progress for Iowa families, and wage growth is moderating nationwide. Many Iowans still feel, though, that inflation spikes impact them. And with the president focused on rebuilding the middle class, I'd like to talk a little bit about how the Fed ensures that this heart of the heartland can feel the benefits of a soft landing as you've laid out.
Oh, you're asking me how you will feel the benefits of the well, I would think pretty open-ended question. So I think, our goal is to keep the economy strong, the labor market strong, and price stability fully restored. So that's really what we can provide, is a long period of stable prices. And we define that as Chairman Greenspan used to, which is people can make economic decisions in their families and their jobs where they don't have to think about inflation all the time. And we're getting back closer to that place, but we're not quite there yet. That's the main thing we can now do. And once we restore price stability, very soundly, that gives us the ability to react more strongly to downturns in the economy without having to worry about inflation. And so that's, we have limited scope, but those are two very, very important things that we can deliver that benefit all families.
I would agree. So I guess I would also like to focus here on the short term. The Fed Reserve has slightly lower rates to ease borrowing costs for rural communities, and long-term trade negotiations strengthen our global position. Would you agree that the agricultural sector in particular is vulnerable to both interest rates and recognized international markets? And how would the Fed evaluate the unintended consequences of policy on commodity-dependent economies in a state like Iowa?
So we have a number of our Federal Reserve Bank presidents represent districts which have extensive agricultural operations and families and farms. And so we hear from them kind of all the time, but we hear from them in great detail around every FOMC meeting. And we understand that times, pretty challenging right now in the agricultural sector. We take that into account. Ultimately, we're responsible for the aggregate level of the economy and for keeping inflation under control and maximum employment. So, but we do very much think about and take into consideration the agricultural sector and the people in it.
We appreciate that evaluation. I know there are farmers back home as well as, our bankers who value that because they're the one providing the capital for it. I want to talk a little bit on the national security side as the vice chair of NatSec here. If foreign actors begin weaponizing treasury sales or dollar reserves, what tools does the Fed have to help preserve financial stability and the dollar's status as a reserve currency within the world?
Essentially what makes us the reserve currency is a few things. It is our great democratic institutions. It is that we have open capital markets, very open capital markets, and it is that we have price stability and the rule of law. Those are the things that make you the reserve currency, and you can keep that status as long as you maintain those things. Of those things, the thing that we contribute is price stability over the long run. So people who want to invest in or use the dollar, they can be confident in the value of the dollar over time, that it won't fluctuate wildly or decline in ways that, and so that's our role. Really, Treasury is responsible for stewardship of the dollar, but we have that role to play as well.
Very good. In the brief time that I have left here, I just came back from a trip to Saudi and the Arab states. Big concern here in the world we're living in right now with Iran looking at asymmetric ways to threaten the United States. Cyber attacks have been on the rise. You got a question here earlier on cybersecurity. Help us feel confident the Fed is doing everything they can to protect us from a cyber threat.
So our part of it is the financial sector and the institutions we regulate, and they spend a lot of time and money on cybersecurity. We spend a lot protecting ourselves, and there are other parts of the U.S. government that are very much involved in making us aware of cyber issues and making sure that we're all ready. And we never sleep on this because it's always getting harder.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I yield my time.
Gentleman's time's expired. The gentleman from California, Mr. Vargas, who's also a ranking member and my colleague on the Monetary Policy Task Force, is now recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Ranking Member. Appreciate it. And of course, Mr. Powell, thank you very much, Chairman Powell, for being here. I'm 64 years old. You're a little bit older than I am. In my lifetime, I know what the most dramatic economic event is, at least that I believe. In your lifetime, what do you think is the most dramatic economic event that you lived through as a country, as a world?
So as an adult, I would say the global financial crisis and the pandemic.
No, just one. You get to pick one.
Big events. Sorry?
You get to pick one. You pick two, just one.
I would say there's a third, which would be the great inflation. So I'm going the wrong way here.
You're going the wrong way. Yeah, just pick one.
I'd say the global financial crisis was, in a lot of ways, scarier than the pandemic for me.
Yeah, it's interesting because both of them were ones that I lived through too. And I have to tell you, the most dramatic for me was the pandemic. In so many ways, I'd never seen anything like it, where everything closed down. I remember flying here from San Diego, where I live, on a 737, and there were 4 passengers. There were 4 of us on the plane. Of course, some idiot sits right next to me. What are you doing, you stupid boy? But anyway, it is interesting that we didn't fall into the recession. We didn't fall into a depression. I was really scared about what was going to happen because of the way we closed down. We didn't know it was going to go. We didn't know it was going to happen. And I think a big reason for that was sort of the strength that we had at the Fed and the country came together and said, you know, we're going to figure this thing out. And we did that. You didn't panic. You guys were very independent. I think everyone did their job. The reason I say that is because I do worry about the independence of the Fed now going forward. So question, can the president appoint himself as the Fed chair?
It's a question, but not for me.
You're the Fed chair, you should know. You should know what the requirements are to be the Fed chair. Can he appoint himself?
I don't know.
You don't know that question? What is, well, you're the Fed chair. What is the requirements to be the Fed chair?
Nominated by the president, confirmed by the Senate. I think you probably have to be a U.S. citizen probably, but I'm not sure.
Okay, so far it seems like the president fits those. He's a U.S. citizen. He can propose himself, and I assume that the senators over there could confirm. Why couldn't he become the Fed chair also?
Again, not a question for me.
Okay.
I wouldn't speculate.
The reason I ask that is because, again, I do think that we have a great system because of the independence of the Fed. And it worries me that more and more, and I assume, I'm not going to ask you this embarrassing question, although I would like to, you know, whether you read all the things that he says about you. I'm sure you do, or some people tell you. Yeah, but I won't tell you what they are. But I'm glad you've been independent. And I think that that's so important because you do look at long terms. It's not missed on you. You know that we want you all to lower the rates. You know that, both sides, right? You get that. The answer could be yes or no.
Honestly, I'm not sure I do know that. I talked to
Well,
a lot of members
from our side,
privately.
we'd love to see the rates go down. And I've heard from a number of my colleagues on the other side, we'd love to see the rates go down.
I talked to a
think
lot of
they'd pretty
members who
unanimously
say
like to see it.
privately, you're doing the right thing. I hear that from a lot of members privately.
Yeah,
But in any case, we have to do, we're appointed and confirmed, my colleagues and I, do what we think is right.
That's exactly right. And that's why I say it, because I think it's not lost on you that we all want the rates to go down. In fact, it's really real when you say, you know, someone's locked in at 3% at their house, you know, their interest rate, so they don't want to move and get a 7% rate. I mean, they don't want to pay that. That's real. My colleagues mentioned that, and that's truthful. And that's why it's so important to be independent. Now, lastly, I do want to ask, because again, it's so darn important to have an independent Fed chair and an independent Fed. Secondly, the dual mandate. I respect the chairman very much, and he's a friend. Hope that doesn't hurt him politically. But that being said, he did ask you a question about the dual mandate in a way that he quoted somebody else and said, is that the way you see it? I do want to see, how do you see the dual mandate? It seems to me that you gave a little bit of a preference to price stability over maximum employment. Is that the case?
No, I think the two things are equal under the law. But if the thought is, you know, we haven't defined it in exactly the way that the chairman said, but notwithstanding that, I do think it's a reasonable way to define it, which is the maximum employment is the maximum level that's sustainable or consistent with price stability over the long run. That doesn't make it, to me, an inferior goal.
Gentleman's time has expired.
Thank you.
I think it's kind of
Mr. Chairman.
implicit in a way.
Chair now recognizes the gentlewoman from Michigan, Ms. McLean, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, and thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it. As a business owner, small business owner myself, access to capital is extremely important to me. So I want to talk a little bit about the Fed's balance sheet and just get a better understanding of how we're thinking about it. I mean, some experts say that the Fed's balance sheet or large balance sheet is distorting the markets and keeping long-term rates, let's say, too low. Also, I think it limits the access to capital, right? Historically, if I'm accurate, the balance sheet's been about $4 trillion prior to the pandemic. Then we raised it, almost doubled it to about $9 trillion, and now it's on a kind of a downward trajectory to about 7.2. Again, if my math is right. Do you think we're on the right track in shrinking this balance sheet?
I do, yes.
I'm trying to get a sense of what the landing spot, in your opinion, should be. Do you think we'll get back to the $4 trillion?
No. So we're in what we call an ample reserves regime. And what that means is that the quantity of reserves, demand fluctuates, and this means the quantity of reserves can fluctuate without affecting interest rates. And we think that's a good thing. What that means is there's going to be a lot of liquidity in the banks and in the financial system. That's a good thing. There wasn't enough liquidity before the global financial crisis. That was one of the problems. We have some shrinking left to do on the balance sheet, but we're not going to get down as far as you asked.
Where do you think we'll land? Because let me start. I'm sorry. Where do you think we'll land?
You know, I can't give you an exact number, but you know, we're going at a pretty modest pace now. We've slowed down, kind of cut in half twice the speed. We think we can go for a good while at this speed, and we'll learn as we go.
So you think the trajectory, so to speak, will remain?
Yes, and I think the fact that it's quite a gradual trajectory now is going to enable us to find that level that is ample and not scarce. When reserves are scarce, you get a lot of volatility, and that doesn't help. So I think that's a good framework. You know, the ample reserves framework, I think, serves the country well.
And you're not concerned in terms of the access to capital? I mean, as a business owner, that's what I look at is I got to be able to get capital. And some people are saying, you know, we're really hanging on to our cash.
I think if, you know, honestly, I think if you took the trouble to go back to a much smaller balance sheet, it would have no effect whatsoever on capitalability for companies. We wouldn't do that at all. We're not pulling capital away from companies. That's not what's happening. It's just you have a big balance sheet where there's a lot of liquidity. The result is there's a lot of liquidity. Banks have, you know, are flush with liquidity for the most part, and that actually enables lending. It probably wouldn't have much of an effect one way or the other if
So
you
you're
went back to a smaller balance sheet.
So you're comfortable with the liquidity? You're comfortable with the access
Yes, I mean-
to capital? Excuse me.
I mean, you know, we look at credit availability for smaller businesses, and you know, right now conditions are a little bit tight.
Yeah, it's tough for people in my district.
Yeah.
It's
I would say that they're not
it's tough.
terribly tight, but we do see that there's some tightness, but that's not really a function of the Fed's size of the Fed's balance sheet. That's just that banks are perhaps a little risk averse in this uncertain environment.
I think it all marriage goes together and is kind of intertwined, but I appreciate that. I want to just switch gears a little bit. Are you seeing any signs of financial instability building beneath the surface that we may not be seeing maybe on top of the surface, whether it's in commercial real estate, private credit, regional banking, I don't know, anything you're seeing underneath the surface that could derail the growth path?
Not really, no. I mean, you mentioned there are a lot of pots that we need to watch to see that they don't boil over. CRE, you know, has been a problem for 5 years. We're working our way through it. I think we're making good progress there. It's not getting worse. It's getting a little better. Private credit is, you know, has its real positive attributes. A lot of it's not funded by deposits, so it's not, as long as it's not funded by retail or by deposits, it's actually fine for financial stability, but it's a very big and fast growing sector, and it hasn't been through a real downturn, so, and it's quite diverse, so I think it bears close watching. I mean, asset prices are high, but leverage is not particularly high for corporations and households historically. It's not particularly high for banks. Banks are well capitalized. So I think overall financial stability conditions are, you know, are not in a place where we worry a lot.
So we're really poised in a pretty good position economically.
Gentlelady's
I
time
think
has
so, yes.
expired.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Illinois, Mr. Caston, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Chair Powell, nice to see you again. We had spoken in February about some concerns I had about some of the cuts in some of our economic data reporting agencies, and I think you'd said at the time that you didn't have a concern, but if you would alert us if there were concerns. You mentioned this with Mr. Liccardo, and I gather, if I'm paraphrasing you, I think you said that you're not concerned about your access to data right now, but I think you said that you don't like the direction of travel. I wonder if you could speak to, well, first, I'm going to work under the assumption that as the chairman of the Fed, you probably have more access to economic data than just about anyone in our country. I am more worried about the impact on smaller businesses that don't have your access to data, whether, you know, someone thinking about hiring decisions, looking at regional inflation rates, all the data we get from those resources. How concerned should we be, you know, if an efficient economy depends on, at some level, on equal access to information? how concerned should we be that our business community, with some of these cuts to BLS and elsewhere, is not going to be able to allocate capital as efficiently as otherwise would be in this moment?
You know, the reality is that essentially all the data we use overwhelmingly is public data. The difference isn't that we have more access. The difference is that this is our job, and we follow the data very, very closely. But you know, the employment reports, the CPI reports, the analysis of that by many economists, internal and external. We just spend all of our time on this stuff. But I think large businesses have the exact same.
Well, but I'm talking about like,
smaller businesses not.
BLS has announced they're cutting 350 indexes. So that data is no longer going to be public data.
That's a different thing. Okay, so if you're asking about that, I don't want to say, and it wouldn't be true to say that we can't do our jobs with the data that we have now. That's just not true. The data overall, we get the data. It's all, these jobs are, you're always going to make mistakes. It's never going to be certain in any time. But I would say seeing that the survey sizes are shrinking and we're seeing more volatility, for example, in the labor market data, lower response rates and things like that, that's not good. You know, we should be getting better and better and better.
Yeah.
I would add the private sector, by the way, we use more and more big private sector data sets. And that is a relatively new thing
Sure.
for the last 5 or 10 years.
Yeah, and oftentimes
It doesn't replace the U.S. government data has been the gold standard.
Yeah, and I guess I get concerned because some of those data sets, of course, you have to pay for, and not every business can afford that. I want to, staying on the data point and picking up on what Mr. Himes was saying, I think only a fool would predict they know what's going to happen in the Middle East right now. But I get concerned that we have, trying to handicap, the Saudis have been very open that they would like to not see the price of oil get above a point where they're going to lose market share, much to the dismay of U.S. frackers. U.S. frackers have been wanting to see it go the other direction. I don't know how to handicap which group is going to have more impact on Trump right now. But I would like to have some smart person out there taking a position on what is happening in oil markets. And the Energy Information Administration has now announced they're not going to run the International Energy Outlook anymore. Should we be concerned about that piece of data as we think about what's happening in global energy markets right now, given all the pressures between various suppliers of where they'd like to see the price go and the wild card that is Iran and the Red Sea?
You know, I don't particularly know that specific report. You know, I know there are many entities that do data analysis around energy and oil and the availability of it and the price of it and all those things. So I can't speak to that one report.
Okay, well, I mean, again, just my own experience before coming here, I relied a lot on that. And if I was in my past job, I would now basically have to rely on the International Energy Agency, which in general was not as robust as the DOE data. And so it's a gap. And I guess maybe I'll just close with, you know, I think a lot of this gets tied together with the Office of Financial Research, which would presumably be synthesizing a lot of this information for you. Your predecessors, Janet Yellen and Ben Bernanke, both recently urged the opposition to cuts in Office of Financial Research that are in the bill that the Republicans are pushing through. Do you share your predecessors' concerns about the importance of that agency to synthesize some of this disparate things so that you can do your jobs, that the American people can do your job, or do you share the views of the Republican Party that agency is not necessary?
You know, I'm not going to take a position on the bill, on the reconciliation package on specific issues like that don't relate to us. I will say generally, I'm a big fan, and everyone at the Fed is a big fan of good data collection.
Gentleman's time has expired. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Montana, Mr. Downing, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Our national debt now exceeds $36 trillion. Congressional Republicans have made it our mission to rein in out-of-control spending, from repealing the Green New scam, enacting common sense Medicaid and SNAP reforms, and rescinding wasteful spending. Mr. Chairman, you've repeatedly said our national debt is not currently at an unsustainable level, but it is on an unsustainable path. Can you describe what the point of no return looks like when our debt reaches an unsustainable level?
So there's no way to know exactly what that is. But ultimately, if the debt is growing substantially faster than the economy, by definition, at some point, it will not be sustainable. So, we're not We don't have oversight responsibility over the fiscal authorities, but that's traditionally what my predecessors have limited themselves to saying, and I'll say it too.
And what effect would that have on the economy?
So you'd see rates go up. It would be very challenging to, I think if you wait too long to fix the problem, you'll have to fix the problem eventually. If you wait too long, it'll be much more painful.
Yes. I believe the US dollar status as the global reserve currency is essential. It allows the US to borrow at lower costs, which stimulates economic growth and increases standards of living. The Trump administration is actively negotiating to ensure we are no longer taken advantage of by our trading partners. At a previous Monetary Policy Task Force hearing, all of the witnesses agreed that the recent volatility in the Treasury markets did not permanently damage the dollar's global reserve currency status. Do you agree?
I do.
Thank you, sir. Let me turn to oversight of the Federal Reserve. I certainly believe that had the Federal Reserve responded faster by raising interest rates earlier to combat the inflation crisis of the previous administration, that interest rates would not be as high as they are now. I hear frequently that from my constituents that they're increasingly getting priced out of the housing market while interest rates remain near record highs despite the rate of inflation coming down. So, Mr. Chairman, I appreciate the Fed's increased transparency under your leadership, and you've always welcomed congressional oversight into the Fed. And I also appreciate the comments you've made about the limits of our knowledge demanding humility. So with that in mind, can you point to oversight practices of other governments into their central banks that could be replicated with the Federal Reserve?
That's an interesting question, and I want to think about that. I'll come see you and we can talk about that. I
Thank you,
think
sir.
we have effective oversight from this committee and from the other committee in the Senate, and I think that's important.
Would you be supportive of an outside independent group of analysts or economists that conducts a periodic review of the Fed's economic assessments and modeling?
So those are ideas I'd like to think about and discuss privately before.
So do you have any other ideas to increase oversight in the Federal Reserve?
I think, like my predecessors, I've fostered, more and more transparency at the margin, and I think that's appropriate. I think transparency is critical if we're to maintain our democratic legitimacy. So I've tried that, but I'll devote some more thought to that question.
Well, I look forward to following up, and I thank you for your responses. And on that, Mr. Chairman, I yield.
Gentleman yields back. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Gonzalez, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Chairman Powell, for being here with us today. I understand commenting on some policy issues or outside of your purview, but I have one that I think is heavily impactful on the American economy right now. And I want to underscore the scale and impact of the ICE raids that we're seeing across the country. Pew Research estimates that over 10.5 million undocumented individuals live in the United States, more than 3.3% of the population today. And according to the nonpartisan American Immigration Council, removing this workforce could cost the U.S. economy between 1.1 and 1.7 trillion in GDP and billions in tax contributions, including 22.6 billion in Social Security and 5.7 billion in Medicare funds that are increasingly critical as our population continues to age. These are resources that are paid by these undocumented have been here for a long time. Many of them have been here for a very long time. That's why I plan to introduce the Save the American Workforce Act, which would establish an employee-sponsored temporary work authorization for undocumented immigrants who have been in the country for 3 years or longer and have never been in any kind of trouble, no criminal liability or nothing else. Additionally, last week I sent a letter to President Trump urging him to halt indiscriminate deportations and issue an executive order that would do exactly what my bill does to protect American businesses that need a workforce. We have the last I heard, I think we have 7 million open jobs. We have a record low unemployment, which is great, but we have 7 million open jobs that we cannot fill by American workers. What economic consequences would we face if these individuals were removed from the workforce, even further hurting the situation that we're in? Could this disrupt even more the economy even more severely than what we experienced during the Great Recession?
So, as you might expect, Mr. Gonzalez, immigration policy is just not for the Fed to comment on or to let alone make, and so I'm reluctant to engage with you on that.
Okay. Well, okay. I want to talk to you something a little differently. We have, and this is a banking issue, banks are making, you know, billions of dollars of construction loans across the country that are timelined, and contractors are not able to fulfill their obligation because they don't have the labor force in the middle of the jobs to finish. I mean, I'm hearing stories in Texas, at least, where people are pouring concrete at midnight. Are y'all having any kind of conversation with the administration on how this could impact the economy and our GDP?
So we have very deep connections all over the country through the reserve banks, and we hear some of the same stories. But for us, you know, we're not the policymakers here. We don't report this to the administration. We don't just publicly, have a view on it. It just is what it is. So,
yeah.
Our responsibility, maximum employment, price stability, many other factors affect those goals, but we don't make those goals. We don't make the policy in those extraneous areas, which include things like energy, for example, or immigration, or fiscal policy, or any number of things. We try to stick to our knitting because that's how we remain independent.
We're living such unconventional times that I would love to have that. It would be great if y'all were having those conversations in the administration. But moving on, the US dollar has also long been the world's dominant reserve currency, but that position is facing growing pressure. As of 2024, BRICS nations led by China and including Brazil, Russia, India, and South Africa have stepped up efforts to reduce their reliance on the dollar in global trade. China, for instance, has expanded the use of the yuan in energy transactions and cross-border payments, while BRICS is actively developing alternative payment systems that could erode the dollar's global role. At the same time, inconsistent and unpredictable economic policies from the White House have contributed to a drop in the dollar's value, now at its lowest level in 3 years. What risk does a weakening dollar pose to our economy, particularly to U.S. borrowing costs, inflation, financial stability, as China and BRIC nations expand their efforts to challenge the dollar's global dominance?
So, by long agreement and custom and tradition, the Treasury Department has responsibility for the dollar and dollar stewardship. I would say we also, are involved in payments policy, and we're very aware. We and the other major central banks are very aware of other payment developments, and working on ideas to make sure that the payment systems that support the dollar and other other major currencies of the democracies are well supported by that infrastructure.
Thank you. I yield back.
Gentleman's time has expired. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Florida, Mr. Ardopoulos, for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Chairman Powell, for being here today and answering these questions for us. It's very much appreciated. Looking back over the last few years, I think the question a lot of people have been asking me as they really were suffering through the challenges with higher prices across the board. I know they got as high as over 9% inflation in 2022. And there's a lot of discussion about, was it Ukraine? Was it transitory? Was it post-COVID? What was the reason? As you look back now in those years, and this is your field of expertise, if you look back and you're teaching a history class, what would you blame the increase in prices on back at that time period?
So I'll start with the fact that it was extremely global. So we saw there literally was a point at which not a single country in the world had inflation 2% or below. So it was everywhere. So you have to look to common factors. And I would say that the pandemic and the closing of the global economy and then the reopening of it, in all cases with some support, that's a big part of the story. Clearly, though, there's a role in that for fiscal policy. There's a role in that for monetary policy. And I like to think all of those factors were involved. And but when it happens everywhere in the world, you can't look to one thing. You got to look to something, a common factor. And I think that common factor is what happened around the pandemic.
Sure, good. And build on that idea, I hate it Monday morning quarterback, but if you had to do it over again, you had this opportunity, as you know, the rates stayed pretty flat in 2021 as inflation creeped up. What would you do differently today if you had the opportunity to look back and make some changes?
I have perfect hindsight in this.
Yes, sir, if you had it, yeah.
Sure. So I would have raised rates a little earlier. I honestly don't believe it would have made much difference to the outcomes, but we would have looked a lot smarter. but that's something I would have done. The other thing is, I mean, ultimately, we did get all the way back to to 2% inflation just about without having a big increase in employment. So that was not at all expected. So I don't know how that would have affected my behavior, but somehow things really came out much better than everyone had anticipated, was that it would take, high unemployment to restore inflation, but it didn't.
And the other pressure point that I hear a lot of people talking about is this idea of the tariff issue. I've heard for months now that the sky is falling, but it seems at this point at least that the inflation rate is pretty steady. And how many months of steadiness do you need before you might look at an even larger rate cut from the 4.33 I think we have today?
Yeah, so you're right. Inflation, the non-tariff parts of inflation that we've been working on for 3-4 years are behaving really well, and that was our forecast. But it's good to see it coming true. I would say we expected that tariffs take a while to work their way through the distribution chain, several months, and I would say we would expect to see meaningful effects, kind of June, July, August. And if we don't, we'll be learning something. We have a highly adaptive, flexible economy, and it's certainly a possibility that the tariffs that we expect will come through in a much smaller level. We can't know that until we actually see it, but I think we'll be learning as we go. And if we see that, then that would lead us to want to cut earlier. The other thing that would lead us to want to cut earlier is if we actually did see some weakness in the labor market of a troubling nature. We don't see that. Those are the two things we'll be looking for.
And the last question I'd ask is, at that same time period where, as you put it, the global issue of inflation, I get that. But at the same time period, there's pretty radical increase in spending in 2021 by the federal government. What factor did that play in the inflation level?
Certainly a factor, I would say. As I mentioned, fiscal policy definitely played a role. I think if you take a step back from those things, what happened was demand came back so much stronger than we expected. You remember, if in late 21, early 22, you had the pandemic still going on, Omicron going, 21? Yeah, 21 into 22. And demand was just much stronger than people expected. And by the way, the supply side was much slower to recover. So that's the labor force, that's all of the snarled up supply chains. The supply side took a long time to recover, and demand was much stronger. That story created the high inflation. Behind that, fiscal policy played a role. The spending did. Monetary policy played a role. And the pandemic.
But you would agree that the government spending did play a significant role in that as well?
Yeah, I would say that.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman yields back. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Illinois, Mr. Foster, who's also ranking member of the Financial Institutions Subcommittee for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Following up actually on Rep. Gonzalez's line of questioning, so in addition to your dual mandate, do you believe that preserving the U.S. dollar and the primacy of the U.S. dollar is part of your job description?
I think it's not formally part of our job, but yes, it's something that we care about, and we certainly wouldn't want to undermine that. But that's really, Treasury has the primary role around the dollar. That's been the case for some time now.
Yeah, I was just wondering how you deal with the sort of worldwide drop in investor confidence in dollar-denominated assets. Frankly, due to a president who kind of disregards conventional economic theory and whose answer to nearly every question seems to be, "Well, I haven't decided yet," or "Maybe I'll give you an answer in a couple of weeks." Maybe I'll just comment. It must be challenging. Now, one of the things I've been very concerned about is, in terms of the job market, is artificial intelligence and the coming impact there. We're seeing predictions by the leaders of the leading AI firms that within 1 to 2 years, a majority of entry-level white-collar jobs will be gone. And there are products that are being released to market that propose to do pretty much exactly that. And I anticipate pretty high uptake of those things to essentially eliminate back office operations in small businesses, things like that, or intermediate-sized businesses. And we're already seeing layoffs in the big tech firms. Microsoft had a big round of layoffs where 40% were computer coders and maybe another 20% supervisors of computer coders. And so I was just wondering what what sort of analysis is the Federal Reserve doing about that job shock, and how is it going to affect your dual mandate when it lands, perhaps as early as the next year or two?
So I think economists everywhere are doing work analyzing the potential implications of AI for employment and some of the very things that you mentioned. And we're certainly both consumers and producers of that kind of research. And don't think anybody, I certainly can't make any positive statements with great confidence about what will happen, but there's certainly a possibility that at least at the beginning, AI will replace a lot of jobs rather than just augmenting people's labor. Over a long run, the history shows that generally new technology raises productivity and creates new jobs over time, but it can be disruptive in the very short term. And AI, anyone who's been exposed to AI has to be kind of stunned with what it's capable of. And if you think, oh, this is just the beginning, they say that 2 years from now, the things you're looking at will be left behind by the continued development. So I think it is certainly everything you would want in a transformational technology, and I think that unknowable, but certainly to be important effects on the labor market. And I hear the same things you mentioned from CEOs, that they can see a way to significant reductions in employment, but I don't think we know that.
Yeah, but the question is, are you developing a playbook for this shock? Part of your job is to look at tail risk, and this is probably not even a real tail risk at this point. A lot of the CEOs think it's more probable than not. I've seen law firms just not hire the same number of junior associates just across the economy. Are you actually developing a playbook in case the shock is real, and what you may or may not be able to do with monetary or other policies?
The playbook is really in your hands and in the private sector's hands. We will be trying to maximize employment, and that will be what we do. And we'll try, at the same time, we maintain price stability.
Yeah.
So we don't have the tools to. You're talking about transitioning people into new jobs and new lives, and
before AI wipes out those new jobs you're retraining them for. Yeah, it's okay. Well, but think about it. I urge you to think about it, and what you will do if that job shock hits. So last week, Fed put out a request for information on ways to mitigate check and payment fraud. Despite a decline in the use of checks, check fraud is really very prevalent. And I was happy to join Chair Hill in sending you a letter and other banking regulators, as well as FinCEN, urging action. Can you summarize what you have in mind doing in response to that letter, or what you've learned the outreach that resulted from it?
So this is on the check fraud thing. I just know we just started a request for information, and I think we're starting a process of gathering a bunch of information, really focusing on that issue.
Okay, and if you could say what you're actually going to do in response to that.
Gentleman's time has expired.
Thanks. Thank you. Yield back.
Gentleman yields back. I now recognize myself for 5 minutes. Chair Powell, we've discussed this several times before, but the issue remains, so I continue to raise it. I sent you a letter several months ago urging you to seek public comment and permanently revisit the SLR and ESLR, particularly given the constraints current calculations places on market participants' ability to intermediate in the Treasury market. I'm glad to see that you're meeting tomorrow to discuss the issue. And I know you've discussed this with Mr. Flood. I want to clarify a couple of things. The last time you testified before the committee, you said you were concerned about the levels of liquidity in the Treasury market, and that one obvious thing to do would be to reduce how binding the SLR on intermediate capacity. Are you considering changes in the SLR and ESLR, and will you consider exempting Treasuries and reserves from the SLR and ESLR?
So I do think we've effectively raised the capital tax on all kinds of intermediation activities, and that certainly includes Treasury market activities. So I've long favored leverage ratio reform, and so we're putting in a document for comment, which will seek comments on one particular proposal and alternatives to that proposal, as I mentioned earlier.
which I think answers my next question, which will you look at changes at the leverage ratios that constrain a bank's ability to participate?
Yes, that's the idea.
In your view, would allowing netting mechanisms for derivatives on treasuries encourage participation in the market? And would you consider looking at that with your prudential counterparts?
This is for derivatives.
Mhm.
My first phone call on that would be to Vice Chair Bowman to ask her what she's planning, but I'm certainly open to that conversation.
Absolutely. Let's discuss the framework review. You've said that the review of the consensus statement is complete, but potential changes to communication strategies and tools may continue into the fall. When can we expect the framework review to be complete, and will you provide opportunities to receive feedback from members, industry, and the public on any changes the board is considering?
So the framework review, there are two parts of it. There's the consensus statement, which contains our monetary policy framework, and then there's communications. On the first, the framework, we've had the meetings that we needed to have to talk about the employment mandate and the price stability mandate and how we might change the framework. Now comes the discussion between participants on the committee, all 19 of us, about exactly what language to use in the new framework. And we're just entering that phase between these two meetings and at the July meeting, and hopefully we will be able to announce something near the end of the summer. And I expect that will be, and by the way, we've talked about, we've laid this out a little bit in the minutes as we go.
One last question. The NPR notes that the FOMC's policy deviates from the first difference policy rule. Will you provide a justification for why the FOMC decided against that path?
Against the first difference rule?
Mm-hmm.
Well, as you probably know, there are 5 rules that we talk about there, and the first difference rule is the one that calls for a price hike. The other 4 say that we're in the right place. So the Taylor rules generally are very supportive for where we are. It so happens right now. First difference rule is a very interesting concept, which we can talk about online, which has a lot of appeal, but it can be a little bit volatile too. And right now it's calling for a rate hike. The other 4 are calling for us to hold our policy where it is.
The irony. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back the balance of my time, and I turn to the gentleman from Oregon, Mr. Bynum, for 5 minutes. Ms. Bynum for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to start off with just kind of a foundational belief I have. This big, beautiful bill is trash, and it's actually increasing our costs. But thank you for being here today. I was just back home and saw firsthand that businesses across the country, across my state, are worried about inflation and rising costs. And particularly for our state, where we make chips, we import, export agriculture, and we have apparel. So just want to level set there. My Republican colleagues have actually been focused today on asking you to lower interest rates, but they're seeming to ignore the market chaos that the president has caused. So my first question is, it's my understanding that one of the key responsibilities of the chair of the Federal Reserve is to stabilize prices and fight inflation. Is that right?
Yes.
By my count, the President Trump, has changed or announced a new tariff or a delay of previously announced tariffs 19 times. And so has the president's ever-changing tariff made it easier or harder to stabilize prices and fight inflation?
So I by practice, never comment on things the president does or says.
Has the administration's policies on tariffs?
Or the administration.
Has the change in policy on tariffs made it easier or harder?
So it's not up to us to judge these changes. These are things that elected politicians get elected and do, and it's just not our job. Our job is to provide stable prices and maximum employment to the public, and that's what we do. So we do expect there will be a set of price increases from some of the price increases from tariffs will flow through to the consumer. We don't know whether that will be persistent or how large it will be, and so right now we're kind of in watch and wait mood until we have a better sense.
Is your sense that back to school will be affected, the holiday season would be affected? you mentioned it a little bit earlier on how you didn't say the exact time frame, but you thought maybe a few months we would start to see changes from
Well, I think
tariff
we're going to be
impacts.
learning as we see. We'll get before the July meeting, we'll get a inflation report well before that. And, we're going to be looking to see, we expect to start to see meaningful increases through the goods channel. And if we don't see that, then that'll be telling us something. We'll be learning from that. And by the way, we'll also be looking at the labor market. If it weakens unexpectedly, we'll be looking at that too. We will continue to adapt to the evolving situation as we have been doing.
So what market conditions would make it so that the Federal Reserve would be able to lower interest rates, which would also lower costs?
So as I just mentioned, I would say if we were to see that inflation is not coming through as our forecast and other public forecasts have suggested, that would push us in the direction of being able to cut sooner. Also, if the labor market were to weaken, that would push us in the direction of being able to cut sooner. I think if the opposite happens, if the labor market remains strong and we do see higher inflation, I think we will still get around to cutting, but it would be later rather than sooner.
What do you think American families are expecting from the Federal Reserve?
Stable prices and maximum employment. That's what we want to deliver. And, we want people to feel so confident of price stability that they never think about inflation. That's where we were for a very long time. And we've made a lot of progress back to that place, but we're not quite there yet. And we're gonna finish that job.
Is there a plan that the administration has presented on how it plans to lower costs as opposed to providing tax breaks for billionaires?
Again, it's really not up to me to discuss the administration's priorities or policies.
I'm going to quickly switch gears here. It seems to me like you're under a lot of pressure from the president to address the national debt. True, false?
Sorry?
Are you under pressure from the president to address the national debt?
So our role is maximum employment and price stability. Fiscal policy is the responsibility of Congress. And so it's not really within our ambit.
I think that despite all of the talk about national debt, this big, beautiful trash bill, continuing to do that will actually raise the national debt. So thank you for answering the questions today and continuing to work to lower costs.
And the lady's time has expired.
Thank you.
Thank you. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Kentucky, Mr. Barr, who is chairman of the subcommittee on financial institutions for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Chairman Powell, for the generosity of your time. We're at the witching hour, but appreciate your endurance. And with respect to my friends, the gentlelady's line of questioning, would a recession that would potentially result from a massive tax increase, a $4 trillion tax increase, would a recession help the debt and deficit picture?
No. Tax receipts would go down and all that.
Yeah, so I think this sky is falling scenario about the one big beautiful bill, we have to put into context, and I'm not asking you, Chairman Powell, to comment on this, but this is my editorial response to my colleague. A massive $4.5 trillion tax increase that would put us into a recession is not a recipe for fiscal discipline. Chairman Powell, let me switch gears to tariffs. Governor Waller argued in a speech earlier this month that tariffs might result in just a one-time price increase as opposed to increasing long-term inflation expectations, especially since this Congress has not pumped massive spending into the economy as Democrats did under President Biden. On this issue of a one-time price increase versus inflation expectations, do you generally agree with Governor Waller's analysis?
So I do agree that basically, if things are a one-time increase, then you don't respond to them. That's the whole idea. Is there's a shock to prices. It could be an oil shock, it could be a tariff shock. Generally speaking, you don't respond if you are highly confident that it will just be a one-time shock. I think the current situation, though, is a complicated one, and I think a number of my colleagues and I feel like it's a decision we need to take with some care. And the reason is because we're not at price stability in 2018, when, or 2018 and 19, when the president's tariffs were put into place, not only did we not raise rates, we cut rates 3 times that year because the tariffs were so much smaller. These tariffs are many times larger, and they do raise kind of more concern. In 2019, we hadn't had high inflation in 30 years. Now we're only a few years reduced away from high inflation. So we think that they may well prove to be a one-time thing, but in the meantime, it's a decision we want to approach with some care.
I think we've made a lot of progress towards getting closer to that 2% goal. Does the Fed take into account the disinflationary fiscal policies like supply-side tax cuts, deregulation, and more energy production that could be a counterweight to whatever one-time price increase that might materialize as a result of tariffs?
So we look at aggregate inflation, not any particular kind, and I'm very gratified at the performance of services inflation, which has come down now. That was the very sticky inflation. So I think overall the inflation picture is actually pretty positive.
Chairman Powell, we're looking forward to this rulemaking later this week addressing Treasury market liquidity. Can you talk about how banks are constrained from holding U.S. Treasuries and other low-risk assets on their balance sheet as a result of these restrictive leverage ratios?
Yes, when banks are bound by the leverage ratio, when that's the binding capital constraint, then that's going to make low risk, low return assets, something you don't want to hold. And so lots of fairly low risk intermediation, including Treasury market intermediation, gets taxed to the point with capital requirements that you just see less of it. So I've always thought that it would be better if we had a leverage ratio that was a backstop rather than the binding thing, and that's what this proposal is going to do.
Well, let me preemptively thank you and Vice Chair of Supervision Bowman for working on SLR reform to accommodate more bank holdings of treasuries to stabilize our treasury markets. Finally, I'm pleased to see that the Fed joined its interagency counterparts and announced that you no longer plan to consider reputational risk in your examination process. Senator Scott and I introduced the FIRM Act to stop the weaponization of the supervision process, to stop the targeting of politically unfashionable groups. Our bill requires regulators to focus on the true risks as opposed to political factors. What was the Federal Reserve's thought process in implementing this common sense reform?
That it's common sense. And I think this is an area where we learned over the last couple of years that there really was a problem here. The reports were louder and louder and more troubling. So we just thought, let's take this off the table. It may have been unintentional on the part of banks that just there was so much. It was just such a
gentleman's time has expired.
Fraught issue that banks turned away people with they didn't intend to discriminate. That's what the banks.
Thank you for helping to depoliticize the
announce
banking
to the
system.
membership we will recognize Mr. Torres and Mr. Loudermilk, then adjourn for our 1 p.m. agreed to hard stop time. And with that, the gentleman from New York, Mr. Torres, is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you. Chair Powell, you spoke about elevated uncertainty and declining sentiment in the U.S. economy. Do you believe, as I do, that the economy would be in a better position but for the elevated uncertainty and declining sentiment created by the Trump tariffs?
I don't want to be criticizing policies. I will say uncertainty has.
Is it fair that it's fair to say that the policy created uncertainty?
It's fair to say uncertainty was very elevated, but it's also fair to say that uncertainty has actually come down since the peak, if you will, in April. I think there's a different feeling out there now than there was 2 months ago, and it's more constructive feeling on the part of businesses, which you must be feeling too.
But it's higher than it otherwise would be in the absence of the Liberation Day tariffs. To what extent was the elevated uncertainty a factor in keeping the Fed from cutting interest rates?
So I think that's part of it. The truth is, we were cutting rates, and we paused in January and haven't cut rates since. And really, the reason is that we, like other forecasters, do expect a fairly substantial wave of price increases to come through to the consumer and to measured inflation. We've always said the timing, amount, and persistence of all that is highly uncertain. I think we hadn't expected to see it until now. We now begin to think it is time for us to be seeing that. And if we don't see it, that will matter. If we do see it, that will matter. So we've just taken a cautious approach to not moving our policy rate until we have a little more confidence about the size and likely effects of that.
Chair Powell, following the so-called Liberation Day tariffs in early April, we saw something the U.S. economy had not seen in decades. A flight not to the U.S. dollar as a safe haven, but away from it. And since President Trump's inauguration, the U.S. dollar index has fallen by nearly 10%, marking the worst first-half performance for the dollar since 1986. At the same time, Japan, America's largest sovereign creditor, just saw the worst 20-year Japanese government bond auction since the 1980s, raising fears that it could reduce its holdings of U.S. Treasuries. Given these developments, do you believe, as I do, that the U.S. may be transitioning from a period of dollar dominance to a period of dollar decline?
Well, let me say, the Fed does not have responsibility for the dollar. That's really the Treasury. But
I'm asking for your analysis.
I wouldn't make that statement. No, I think things have been volatile. The markets are digesting things, and I think the Treasury market's been fine by many measures. The dollar is still.
You feel the safe haven status of the dollar is as strong as it's ever been?
I think the dollar is still the number one safe haven currency, and I don't think it's. I would say these narratives of decline are premature and a bit overdone.
I want to ask about the debt. The big, beautiful bill would have ugly consequences for our nation's finances, adding more than $2 trillion to the debt if the provisions are temporary, and far more if made permanent. We've accumulated World War II levels of debt, not during a world war, but during peacetime. Interest payments on the debt have become the largest item in the federal budget after Social Security, surpassing Medicaid, Medicare, and military defense. To what extent is the U.S. at risk of entering a debt spiral in which rising interest costs lead to ever larger deficits, which in turn lead to ever larger interest costs?
Yeah, I think that the U.S. federal budget is on an unsustainable path. The debt is not at an unsustainable level right now, but the path is not sustainable. And I think the sooner we deal with that, and by we, I mean you, the better.
The Trump administration has championed the unitary executive theory, the notion that the president has absolute power over all entities that wield executive power. That theory, if taken to an extreme, would all but abolish the independence of the Federal Reserve. If monetary policy became nothing more than an expression of presidential will and whims, what havoc would that wreak on the U.S. economy?
I think that independent central banks have proven over time to be a valuable and critical institutional practice. And I think that is because basically advanced economy democracies around the world have given their central banks a degree of operational independence. They assign them goals. You go do this and you stick to those things, but we'll let you, you may choose the means of achieving those goals. It's called instrument independence, but not goal independence. And I think it's a very
Gentleman's time has expired.
Very important practice.
Gentleman's time has expired. Chair now recognizes our last member of the day, the gentleman from Georgia, Mr. Loudermilk, for 5 minutes.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Powell, it's good to see you again. And I'm going to be brief, so maybe we can get out of here right at time. As some of my colleagues know, I chair the bipartisan Payments and FinTech Caucus, along with a fellow Georgian on this committee, Representative David Scott. And in the past, you and I have talked about payment-related issues like FedNow, but today, I'd like to ask you about the failure of Synapse Financial Technologies, a third-party service provider that connects banks with non-bank fintechs, and what it means for the bank and the non-bank ecosystem. Last year, a dispute between Synapse Financial Technologies and Evolve Bank and Trust revealed a shortfall in customer savings deposits of $65 to $95 million. There are still thousands of individuals who are not able to access their funds, including some of my constituents. So the question is, could you provide an update on what the Federal Reserve is doing to ensure that customers regain access to their funds? And is there anything that the Federal Reserve is considering to help prevent situations such as this going forward?
So I don't have a lot of specifics for you on that. I am assured that we're still very much doing everything we can to try to get people their money back and to avoid similar occurrences.
Okay. Well, I said I was going to be brief, and that was a brief answer. So with that, I yield back, Mr. Chair.
Gentleman yields back. The chair would like to thank Chairman Powell for his testimony today. And without objection, all members will have 5 legislative days to submit additional written questions for the witness to the chair. Questions will be forwarded to the witness for his response. And Chair Powell, please respond no later than January 29, 2025. This hearing is adjourned.